You don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Dead up perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Manga Muse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the third part of What If Deku Enters Hazbin Hotel. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of MaxX69 on fanfiction.net. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. 8.5 hours had passed when Izuku awoke from his sleep and opened his eyes, getting a glimpse of the closure of a fiery portal. He sat up in his bed with his pajamas on him and rubbed his eyes with his hands as he observed his surrounding and realized something. He was at home. He was sitting on his bed inside his room. He was utterly surprised by this. How did he get back there? Where was his father? Where was his aunt? As these questions ran through his mind, Shadow moved out of his hideout and revealed himself to his master, appearing at his right side. Izuku turned his head and smiled at his shadowy friend, when suddenly, with a loud bang, the door of his room bursted open. Both of them got startled and looked in the direction of the door to see who opened the door. It was Inko. She had a little bit of messy hair and bags under her eyes, indicating she hadn't even slept since his son left due to her worry. She was still wearing the same clothes from the previous day. "Mommy?" Izuku asked with surprise. "Izuku," Inko exclaimed as she ran towards her son and embraced him with her hug once she got to him. "Thank God. You're all right? Did your father do something to you? Did he hurt you?" she asked worriedly as she looked at him. "No, he didn't hurt me. He was really kind," Izuku stated as they broke their hug, making Inko widen her eyes as she heard this statement. Really?" Inko quizzed in shock and confusion. "Can you tell me why you did there?" Inko requested. "Of course," Izuku replied, then began to list his adventures with his father to his mother. He told her how he met his father, where did he take him, how he made a new friend, how he found out that he could make fire, how he met his second auntie, how he met one of his father's friends, how tasty the meal he ate at his father's place, how he and Rosie taught him how to dance, and how his father protected and saved him 2 times. Inko was shocked to her core when she heard all of this. Of course, she was freaked out by hearing that his son was in danger. But she was also puzzled thanks to the behavior of the radio demon, as Izuku described him. She thought Alastor was going to do something terrible to her son, but she had never expected him to be an actual father to Izuku. He was indeed a spirit of mystery, she thought. "I see," Inko said in shock. Did you enjoy your tea time there?" she inquired. "Yes, Mommy," Izuku chirped. "I'm glad," Inko responded, then noticed something that she somehow didn't when she hugged her little green beanie. "Is Sweetie?" "Yes, Mommy?" he asked joyfully. "Why is there a paper on you?" Inko pointed out. Hearing this, Izuku widened his eyes in surprise and lowered his head to observe his body to see what his mother referred to. There was a sheet of paper with a possible message written on it with red ink on his body. He grabbed it with both of his hands, took it off of his body, and started to read it inside his mind. "My dear sweet little boy, I have quite enjoyed our exquisite time together. I have to apologize for the unfortunate events that occurred during our bonding moments. I hope you won't be mad at me because of it. If you desire to visit me, just ask the darling mother of yours. She'll show you the ropes. Also, if you don't mind, I have hidden a little surprise present for you under your pillow as a gift for all of your birthdays I had missed. I'm looking forward to our next delightful meeting. Sincerely, your father." His father was the one who sent this letter. And to be honest, Izuku felt totally excited and happy because of the fact that his father wanted to see him again as possible, causing him to form a big smile on his face which was not unnoticeable for his mother. "So, what's in it?" Inko queried anxiously. "It's from Daddy. He wants to see me again," Izuku beamed cheerfully, then handed the paper over to Inko, who just stared at the paper in even more shock. After he gave the paper to his mother, he turned around and crawled to his pillow and lifted it with both of his hands, checking it if there was anything under it. There was something under the pillow indeed. It was a long, small, red-colored box wrapped with a bright-colored ribbon. He put the pillow down and grabbed the box with his hands and raised it, putting it down between him and his mother, causing her to snap out of his shocked stare and glance at her son. "What's that?" Inko questioned anxiously as she put the paper down to the bed. "A present," Izuku replied. "Daddy said in the letter he gave a gift for all of my birthdays," he explained, making Inko more confused with this remark. After his explanation, he untied the ribbon on the present, grabbed the top of it, and lifted it off, revealing the insides of the box for all three of them. But what they saw was clearly not what Izuku expected it to be. Inside the boy, a short, thin, green-colored cane was laid with a green vintage microphone attached to it, with the addition of white trimming on the mic. As Izuku curiously observed the cane, he took it out of the box with his hands and witnessed it with interest. With curiosity lingering inside him, he raised his right hand and touched the mic with his right finger index 2 times to see if it reacted to it. When he proceeded to do this, the middle of the microphone suddenly glowed up in a green color, and in the place of the light, a singular eye appeared with a green sclere and a black sharp pupil and looked at him. "Hello, master," the mic greeted happily. "Yeep!" Izuku was startled as he dropped the microphone on the bed in alarm. "I'm sorry for scaring you, master. I didn't want to." The mic apologized with remorse. "Wait, you can talk?" Izuku wondered as he picked the up and looked into its only eye. "Yes, indeed, master. I'm capable of organizing verbal communication with you in order to lend my help for you in whatever you need." The microphone interpreted, making Izuku observe it with sparkling eyes. "You're so cool," Izuku noted excitedly. "Oh, my, I'm flattered. Thank you, master." The mic remercied as both Shadow and Inko watched their occurring conversation. "I have to thank Daddy for this next time I see him," Izuku chirped as he continued to look at the mic with excitement and cheerfulness, allowing Inko to drop the question that she was most curious and worried about. "So, sweetie, do you want to visit your father again later?" Inko questioned, wanting to know the answer of her son eagerly. After she asked this, Izuku focused his attention on his mother and started to think about it. But as he began this act, he grabbed the piece of paper and looked at it as he recalled everything that his father told him in person and in the letter. How kind he was, how he showed him he had other abilities, how he tried to cheer him up when he was gloomy, and how he protected him. And lastly, how his father desired to him again as soon as and as regularly as possible. These facts made him clear that he knew what was the right answer to Inko's question. So, with the answer in his mind, he looked up from the paper and set his eyes upon his mother, a relaxed and happy expression on his face. "Yes, Mommy, I want to see him again," Izuku confessed honestly to Inko with a small smile on face. "Are you sure, honey?" Inko quizzed uneasily. "Yes, Mommy, I'm sure," he stated as he turned his head, and with the observing Shadow behind him, he looked at the sheet of paper in his hands with a sweet smile. And from that day on, our protagonist visited his father on almost every weekend, strengthening their relationship even more. Not only that, he even reunited with his new friend, Mello, who immediately hugged him when they met again at the same playground, and as they turned older, they became really close friends. She was his first demonic friend. Of course, as time went on, he eventually found out who his father really was and what place he lived in, and although he wasn't a fan of his father's past actions, it didn't matter to our broccoli head. Alastair was still his father, and he still loved him. And as his visits became more frequent, the sinners and native-born demons began to gossip about a human boy who had some sort of special connection to the radio demon. Some of them said that it was just a pure myth, which was founded by a group of some crazy drug-addicted dumbasses, but some of them stated they saw them walking around with their own very eyes. They didn't know it was true or not, but one thing was certain. If this boy really existed and was somehow the son of the radio demon, they had to fear him, just like his father. Because if they didn't, God knows what kind of terrible things he would have done to them. It was a sunny spring morning in Japan, 10 years after our hero met his father for the first time. The sky of Musutafu was accompanied by a few fluffy clouds, decorating it with their white bodies, while the wind scattered the cherry blossoms across the city, just like it did in the time of every spring. Most of the people were already on their way to their workplaces. Meanwhile, the students of the city were heading towards their schools due to the fact that it was the beginning of a new school year. Our protagonist was not different, not even in the slightest. Izuku Midoriya, who was now a 14-year-old teenager, was running on the sidewalk of one of the streets excitedly while a much larger shadow, around his master's height, attempted to follow him by flying. Izuku was wearing a black-colored school uniform, a yellow backpack on his back, and red shoes. However, his excitement was not because of the new school year. It was due to another phenomenon. The phenomena he was a fan of since he was little. As he ran on the street, he reached a pedestrian crossing which was controlled by a traffic light that changed its light into a red color, signaling and causing Izuku and Shadow to stop in front of the pedestrian crossing next to 3 other people. As they waited for the traffic light to show its green-colored light, Izuku enthusiastically lifted his legs one after another and Shadow got next to his master. Shortly after, the red color of the lamp disappeared and it shifted to its green color, allowing the citizens to cross the road. At the moment they saw this, Izuku immediately jolted forward, crossing the road as fast as he could while Shadow tried to keep up with him. He just ran and ran, until at a point of his journey, he looked up to check if he was in the right direction. When he saw that he was indeed in the right direction, he continued his way forward while Shadow tried to keep up with his master. As he was on his way to the location, a loud roar was heard in the air, assuring the both of them with the fact that they were close to their point of interest. Not long after the roar, Izuku and Shadow finally got to their destination, which was not other than the Tatooine station. As they arrived at the station, they instantly got the sight of a crowd standing in front of the station and staring at the reason why Izuku wanted to come to this location in the first place. At the rails of the station, a giant man was rampaging, not allowing anyone to approach the station. He was 6 or 7 meters and had a strange, animal-like head, reddish-brown beard, and long brownish hair, with his attire only consisting of a black torn jacket and blue jeans. As he continued to wreak havoc, Izuku and Shadow observed the large man with astonishment, with the former forming a big, excited smile in the process. "That's a huge villain," Izuku remarked hectically as Shadow nodded in agreement, sharing his master's opinion. After Izuku said this, the giant man let out a roar once again and swung his left, causing a metal structure to break apart and begin to fall down towards the crowd. The people in the crowd started to scream in fear and fright, when a tall, strong, muscular man with short, spiky, white hair, small black eyes, and a square jaw ran in the direction of the falling metal structure. He was wearing a large headband on his forehead with a yellow and black striped caution pattern, matching his thick wrist guards and his belt around his wrist, which possessed a square buckle with a triangular decoration sat in its center. He also had what seemed to be a cyan-colored cardigan that exposed his lower torso and the center of his pectorals, held onto his chest on each side by small metal nuts. His pants were dark blue with a white stripe down each side and were slightly baggy on him, and his shoes were plain black with a simple design. The man ran under the metal structure, and as he got to his position, he clenched his hands into fists and touched them to each other, then raised his arms towards the sky, attempting to catch the falling structure. At the moment he lifted his arms, the structure fell into his hands and miraculously, he was capable of keeping it in place, preventing it from falling on the crowd. As he caught the metal structure, a small gust of wind was released, causing the front row of the crowd to close their eyes for a short amount of time. After they opened their visionary organs, they watched in awe as their savior held the structure in place. "It's Death Arms," a man stated in a traditional suit announced in amazement. "He carries out justice through his great physical strength, the punching hero." The same man announced in wonderment. Just as he said this, a barricade rail made out of water, with the rail possessing X-shaped warning symbols, appeared in front of the crowd, not letting them take another step forward. "Everyone, this is dangerous. Stay back, stay back," another hero alarmed, getting the attention of the crowd. His costume was rather unique, to be precise. He was dressed like a firefighter and acquired a long yellow jacket with high visibility lines running down the center, along his sleeve cuffs, hem, and high collar, as well as a red fireman hat. A thin cannon was strapped to his left shoulder, which was attached to the red water tank he wore on his back. He also possessed a white mask with a single orange bead embedded into the center, which was possibly his eye. He had taps for hands with circular wrist guards just behind their openings, red valves over the top, a pair of similar knee pads on his legs, and yellow sneakers on his feet. The rescue specialist, Backdraft, is here, too, another man declared as some people began to exult Backdraft. As these events occurred, our sweet broccoli head tried to find a part where he could get a closer look at the action. That place was quickly found by Shadow, who guided his master to go past two adult men who were exchanging their views about the current situation. But man, turning into a giant monster's an amazing quirk, the man remarked, then turned his to his left side, looking at the man at the left. What did he do, he wondered. He stole someone's bag and went out of control when he got cornered. Another man with blonde hair explained. A quirk like that, and he's a bag snatcher? The man questioned as our nice broccoli walked past him, following his shadowy friend in the process. As they went forward and Izuku kept his excited smile, a man near our hero grabbed his own phone and dialed the phone number of his boss into it. I'm sorry, the trains, he began with a nervous tone. Yes, I don't know what time I will make it into work, he explained as our young overlord and his shadow got nearer and nearer to the front row of the crowd. Just as the man told his explanation to his boss through the phone, a muscular male figure leaped over the crowd, causing a group of girls to scream in excitement. You can do it, Kamui. They cheered to the hero they referred to as Kamui, hence his full hero name was Kamui Woods. His appearance was a little bit strange, but it was usual to look like that in the world of quirks. He possessed skin that looked like the surface of a tree and a wooden mask on his face, covering his puffy red leaf-like hair and every part of his face, except his eyes. His hero attire also consisted of a dark blue bodysuit that included a wooden belt, which had a bundle of roses hung from the left side, wooden knee pads, and wooden shoes. After landing safely from his leap, Kamui ran forward and jumped up to the nearest traffic light. Then, with another leap, he rose into the air and jumped at the edge of the rails, dodging the attack of the villain by jumping into the air. While he stayed in the air, the giant villain turned his head and looked at him with frustration and nervousness. Stay away from me, the villain shouted aggressively. As this event unfolded, Izuku and Shadow finally got in front of the station, stopping between two men, with one having a normal body plan and a nice, casual suit, and the other possessing the same height as Izuku, a white shirt, blue jeans, and three-star-like hunches on his bald head. They watched as the young teenager and his shadowy companion intruded between them and looked at the conflict with a bright smile. Who's fighting? Izuku inquired cheerfully as he and Shadow observed the fight between hero and villain. Speaking of which, the villain stretched out his right hand to catch Kamui, which was unsuccessful, thanks to Kamui evading the attack by swinging backwards with the help of his left arm, which was extended like a branch and was wrapped around another metal structure. As he swung and got higher in the air, he unwrapped his left arm and retreated it back into its original, anatomically accurate form, and looked at the villain seriously. Kamui Woods, Izuku announced with admiration in his voice. Despite his young age, he's very talented and a rising star, he stated in a mixture of excitement and fanboying, which didn't go unnoticed by the man on his right side. You were the one asking, but you gave a perfect commentary, kid, the man remarked, getting the attention of both Izuku and Shadow. You're a fanboy, aren't you? He wondered, turning his towards Izuku and pointing his right index finger at our protagonist. Well, Izuku started, but couldn't say anything, just looked away and adopted a shy smile on his face, while Shadow crossed his arms and rolled his non-existent irises in a playful manner. Meanwhile, Kamui Woods rushed in the direction of the villain, jumping away from the strike of the villain's right hand. After his dodge, he jumped up to his arm and began to run up on his arm, jumping up and extending his right arm into a long branch in an attempt to reach the villain's face. The villain blocked his attack by lifting his left hand in front of his face, causing Kamui Woods to wrap his arm around only the villain's wrist. The villain swayed his hand in order to get the hero off of his body, when Kamui released his grip on the villain's wrist, spun in the air elegantly, and landed on a railway carriage safe and sound, facing the villain from a distance. Illegal use of powers during the rush hour and robbery resulting in bodily injury, he listed. You are the incarnation of evil, he declared, then raised his right arm and turned it in the direction of the villain, and elongated and outstretched his arm, morphing it into multiple long branches. Seeing this, Izuku got more excited, knowing what was going to happen. Oh, here it comes, he announced as he pointed at Kamui Woods. Show us something flashy, Tree Man. the man on the right side of Izuku exclaimed. Preemptive, Izuku started. Binding, Kamui Woods continued. Lacquered chain prison, they said in unison. Then Kamui Woods unleashed his well-known ultimate move, shooting his wooden tendrils towards the villain, who tried to protect his face by attempting to cover it with his left arm. But just as he did this, something unexpected happened that no one saw coming. Canyon Cannon! An enormous woman shouted as she flew towards the villain and landed a powerful kick on his jaw, almost knocking him out and making him fall off the rails. She was a young woman who acquired purple eyes with white pupils and elegantly long eyelashes. She had prolonged, voluminous, creamy blonde hair reaching down to her waist with two shorter strands curled to frame her face, parted slightly to her right. Her hero attire was composed of a purple and pale tan-colored skin-tight bodysuit, which was accented with orange stripes. The suit seemed to have a pair of purple gloves with orange accents on the edge of the cuff. The design was similar to her boots, which were cut off at the thigh in a deep V shape. The suit also possessed 3 peculiar orange diamond-shaped dots on the purple top that were located under her chest, and she also wore a purple domino mask with horn-like protrusions on the sides. Everyone in the scene, including the heroes, looked at the new arrival dumbfoundedly, as she touched with her large feet, making the ground rumble as she did so. The moment she landed and straightened her posture, tons of photographers and journalists surrounded her and made as many photos as they could, recording the possible new hero. "Today is the day of my debut," she declared in her normal tone as she inspected the villain if he was okay. "My name is MT. Lady. A pleasure to make your acquaintance." She joked as she introduced herself as MT. Lady winked with his left eye and showed off his bouncy lower part to the crowd, making some of the men blush a little bit while our broccoli head got his backpack off of his back and began to search for his notebook in it. He had been searching for it for several minutes unavailingly, when, to help his master, Shadow put his pitch-black right hand into the bag, and after a few seconds, he got the notebook out of the backpack and with his eyes forming a happy expression on his face, Shadow handed it over to Izuku, who scratched the back of his head sheepishly with his left hand and accepted the notebook from his shadowy friend. After he obtained the notebook, he took a pen into his left hand, zipped his yellow backpack, put it back on his back, and began to write his notes about the new hero he just saw while Shadow observed him as he wrote MT, Lady's description. Speaking of which, as our dear half-demon half-human protagonist listed and wrote his notes, the now shrunken MT, Lady handed the villain over to the authorities and answered the several questions of the reporters, shamelessly taking the credit away from Kamui Woods in the process. After this was done, the crowd slowly started to scatter, leaving just a few people there, including Izuku and Shadow, with the former still writing his notes. Gigantification, huh? He wondered as he continued to record his notes. She looks like she'll be popular, and it's an amazing quirk, but thinking about the damage to the city that'll go hand in hand with that, its use might be limited. No, but whether or not she can control the size. Izuku muttered as he analyzed MT, Lady's future career, while Shadow watched him write all of this down. "Hey, wait, you're taking notes? You want to be a hero?" The same man from before queried, placing his right thumb and his right index finger under his chin. "That's great, you can do it," he stated, making a thumbs up with his right hand and causing Izuku and Shadow to look at him, with the former morphing a large smile as he heard this. "Yes, I'll do my best," Izuku beamed, keeping his large smile from before and showing off his mouth full of white, pointy, sharp teeth, while Shadow witnessed this with a soft and happy expression on his face. He felt glad for his master never giving up his dreams. Not to mention that he was nice to everyone, both human and demon. It was truly an honor for him to serve Izuku. As he thought of this, he looked at the street clock nearby in order to check the current time. When he observed it, he widened his jungle green eyes in shock and rapidly tapped his master's right shoulder to gain his attention, which was fortunately successful. Izuku turned his head in the direction of his shadowy companion and looked at him confusedly. "What is it, Shadow?" Izuku asked with confusion in his voice. In response, Shadow lifted his pitch-black right hand and pointed at the street clock, making it Izuku to witness the clock as well. When he looked at it, he lowered his ears a little bit and realized something in shock. It was 10 minutes before the bell would ring in the school he learned in. He couldn't be late on the first day of school. and the school was still far away. But if he ran, he could get there just in time. So, with this, he decided to put his notebook and pen back into his backpack and zipped it, which stopped midway due to the zipper getting stuck. "Tyrer, I'm going to get late," he noted as he nervously tried to zip his backpack fully. Seeing his master struggle, Shadow levitated to the backpack, and with a swift and precise move, he zipped the backpack, closing it completely. "Merci, Shadow," Izuku thanked Shadow, who nodded in understanding. Then, Izuku placed his backpack on his back and began to rush towards his school, not forgetting the man who praised him. "Have a nice day, sir," Izuku exclaimed as he got a larger and larger distance from the man and waved to the man, while Shadow flew after him. "You too, kid," the man shouted back as the young overlord and his shadowy helper got more and more further away. And thus, after getting out of the sight of the man, Izuku continued to jolt towards the direction of the school as fast as he could, while Shadow attempted to keep up with him, just like he did when they went to the station. After a 7-minute-long journey and with tired huffing, Izuku finally reached his school, Aldera Junior High. With Shadow by his right side, he ran straight through the open gates of the school and entered the building, switched his red shoes to white ones, and rushed to his classroom, stopping in front of its door. When he arrived, he grabbed the door and slid it to the side, opening it in the process. As he unlocked it, Shadow vanished from sight, turning himself back to his shadow form. Although he always favored being presented next to his master, he only came out of his hideout when he and Izuku were alone, or when he needed to protect or help his master, or when Izuku asked him to show himself. Aside from those 3 exceptions, Shadow usually stayed hidden due to one reason. He was really shy, especially around new people, just like his master. Izuku looked inside and saw that most of his classmates were already inside, chatting with each other. He sighed and quietly walked to his desk, pulled the chair out, and sat on it, taking the backpack off of his back, unzipping it, pulling out his notebook, and going on with the continuation of his notes in it. At last, after a few minutes, the bell finally rang, signaling the students to sit on their chairs and become quiet. Shortly after, their homeroom teacher stepped inside the classroom, obtaining a bunch of papers in his hands. He closed the door and walked to his desk, while the students observed him, with the exceptions of our green Cambion and another teenager, who had spiky sandy blonde hair, red eyes, and rested his legs on his desk, sporting white shoes and the same black uniform Izuku had. After he got to his desk, the teacher placed the papers on the desk and looked at his class in a serious manner. "Since you're all 3rd years, it's time for you to think seriously about your future." The teacher started, witnessing his class's attention on him. "I'll pass out handouts for your future plans now, boo," continued as Izuku looked up from his note a little bit and took a quick glance at his homeroom teacher, who went on with his speech. "You're all," he continued, grabbing the pile of papers with his left hand while most of the students began to activate their quirks. Then, the teacher made a smile on his face, turned around, and flung the papers into the air. "Pretty much planning to go into the hero course, right?" he questioned as the papers he threw into the air scattered everywhere. "Yes," the class cheered, showing off their quirks. "Yes, you all have wonderful quirks," the teacher remarked. "But using your powers at school is against the rules," he pointed out, while Izuku flattened his ears a little bit and raised his right hand a tiny bit, joining into the celebration on his way. However, this lightened atmosphere in the classroom fastly changed by a certain individual. He had "Teach," he started, "don't lump us all in the same group. I'm not going to be stuck at the bottom with the rest of these rejects," he commented arrogantly, looking at his teacher and earning some frustrated looks from his classmates. "That was rude, Bakugo," the class shouted angrily at their classmate who they referred to as Bakugo, who simply didn't care about their angry remarks. "You all should shut up like the extras you are," Bakugo said rudely, not even affected by his classmates. "Oh, if I remember correctly, you want to go to UA. Hi, right, Bakugo?" The teacher wondered as he checked this information on his black tablet, while Bakugo formed a cocky smile on his face. All of the students in the room were absolutely shocked by hearing this statement, knowing well how hard it was to get into UA, while Izuku lowered his ears even more and rested his head on the surface of his desk, covering it with his hands in worriness and nervosity. "UA? That national school?" a student quizzed in shock. "It was in the top 0.2% this year, you know," another student declared in pure shock. Their acceptance rate is really low, too, a third student pointed out in utter shock. That's exactly why you guys are just extras, Bakugo announced, then jumped out of his seat and landed on the top of his desk. I aced the mock test. I'm the only one who could possibly get into UA. I'll definitely surpass All Might and become the top hero, he stated confidently but self-conceitedly at the same time. My name'll be inscribed on the list of top earners, he declared with arrogant confidence. Oh yeah, Midoriya wanted to go to UA as well, right? The teacher questioned, interrupting Bakugo's speech and startling Izuku by mentioning his name. As the teacher let out his statement, every other student began to whisper among themselves about this. The reason was quite simple. In their class, Izuku and Bakugo were the most well-known due to their quirks. Of course, Bakugo was really famous in the class thanks to his amazing explosion quirk. But for Izuku, the situation was totally different. He was well known for how strange his quirk was. He had the ability to summon tentacles and had a shadow bodyguard. Two completely distinct abilities, but somehow they were connected. Not to mention that, according to the rumors in the class, his quirk didn't even match his mother's quirk, and he never knew who his father was, which, in secret that no one knew, was not true. And due to this, they thought that maybe Izuku's dad was maybe a villain, which, truth be told, was true in a way. If only they knew the truth. So, with this information, they tried to avoid him as much as they could. By the annoying whispers of his classmates and by getting knowledge of that shitty Deku's future plan, Bakugo became more and more agitated, until he didn't take it anymore. He had to let off some steam. And what better way to do it than by releasing it on the shitty brat he always hated. In his frustration, he landed his right hand on Izuku's desk and created an explosion, almost breaking the desk in half and causing Izuku to fly out of his seat, touching the floor near the end of the classroom and hitting his butt painfully. "Hey, Deku!" Bakugo shouted angrily as Izuku proceeded to endure the pain from the fall and looked at his best friend with a frightened expression. "Without a good quirk, you wouldn't be good even as a sidekick. Why do you think they'll care about you when I'm here for them?" He challenged aggressively as smoke escaped from his palm that he made the explosion with. "No, wait, Kaken. It's not like I'm trying to compete with you or anything," Izuku clarified as he crawled backwards in fear, hitting the board at the end of the room with his head in the process. "Believe me," he assured, then began his explanation. It's been my dream since I was little." "And well?" Our protagonist answered, looking around nervously for a little bit, focused his attention back to his former friend. "I won't know unless I try," Izuku added, increasing Bakugo's anger even more. "What do you mean, unless you try?" Bakugo questioned furiously as smoke erupted from both of his palms. "Are you taking the test for fun?" Bakugo quizzed, filled with anger as he loomed over Izuku, who looked at the floor with a defeated look. "What the hell you can do? You have a shitty quirk," he remarked, hurting Izuku with his words even more. For Izuku, this was ordinary. It was usual for him to experience the bullying of Bakugo and his gang even after he had got his quirk. It was integrated into his everyday life. He couldn't escape it. It didn't matter he had a quirk. Bakugo still bullied him since he was 4 years old. Seeing Izuku doing this and not saying anything to him and ignoring him, Bakugo became more frustrated than ever and decided to continue to mock Izuku. "Hey, you don't hear what I'm fucking saying? Your ears are crappy too?" Bakugo inquired, getting one step closer to our protagonist and stretching out his left hand towards him. This was the moment when Shadow had enough. He protected his master a million times from this asshole of a friend, and he will do it this time as well. After all, it was his duty, his life mission, to protect and help his master no matter what. So, with this, he stepped out of his shadow form in a millisecond and performed a tight grip on Bakugo's left arm with his pitch-black right hand, revealing his protective form to Bakugo and staring into the explosive boy's eyes with his red eyes. "Let me go, you shadowy freak," Bakugo demanded as he tried to free his arm, but, unfortunately for him, to no avail. Shadow raised his right hand full of long, sharp talons and was about to strike down, but luckily, this act was interrupted by their homeroom teacher. "All right, that's enough, you two," the teacher said, stopping Shadow with his words and making all three of them look at him. "Bakugo, Midoriya, go back to your seats." the teacher ordered, making Shadow release his grip from Bakugo's arm and turn back to his original form. After his arm was free, Bakugo observed Izuku and Shadow one last time, with the former looking at him with frightened eyes, fully lowered ears and tail, and the latter witnessing him with an angry expression on his face, judging by the shape of his jungle green eyes. With this observation done, Bakugo grumbled something under his nose that no one could understand, walked back to his desk, and sat down on his chair. After Bakugo sat down, with a worried face, Shadow set his eyes upon his master, and extended his left hand, offering him his help to stand up. Izuku accepted his help and grabbed his shadowy friend's hand with his right hand, stood up as Shadow pulled him up from the floor, and approached his desk quietly while Shadow set up his chair, allowing his master to sit down comfortably, which was exactly the thing Izuku did. Then, Izuku pulled himself and the chair closer to the desk and turned his attention to his teacher, while Shadow floated to him and observed his master the scene from behind the back of Izuku. "Good," the teacher noted. "Now, with that out of the way, let's start our first lesson, shall we?" he stated, then began to teach the class about something that most of the students didn't like at all. And thus, the rest of the day flew away in an instant, like a butterfly in the sky or a leaf scattered in the air. During most of the classes, Izuku tried to concentrate as much as he could, but he was so excited about the analysis of the latest action of the heroes that he almost couldn't focus his mind on the lessons. He just had to wait patiently. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, a horrible event occurred. The fearful scream of a woman filled the air as a villain ran out of a shop and rushed past her, almost hitting her in the process. The villain had a dark green-colored liquid-like body, similar to a slime or sludge of sorts, with a pair of eyes that had yellowish sclere and red irises, a mouth full of teeth, and some cash that he had just stolen moments ago. He was tall, but not too tall. The only clothes the villain possessed blackish, grayish jeans and a black belt around his waist. "Thief, someone!" the shop owner exclaimed in the direction of the villain as the woman who screamed fell on his butt and activated his barrier-like quirk around her body in order to protect herself. "Catch me if you can," the villain stated as he ran across the street, earning a lot of attention from the citizens. "Huh? There's no hero around?" a man said as he watched the sludge villain run away. "Normally someone would come right away," a second man remarked as a very skinny man with blonde hair, two distinct tufts hanging downwards from his hair, and blue eyes stepped out of a shop, holding a plastic bag in his left hand with two plastic bottles in it, filled with some kind of energy drink called Torrent. His clothing consisted of a white shirt, green jeans, a black belt with a symbol on it around his waist, and black shoes, with all of his clothes seeming to be 1 or 2 sizes bigger than the ones he should have worn. "This guy is taking advantage of the chaos from this morning," a third man noted as the skinny observed the fleeing villain. "There are tons of people who don't know what to do with their quirks. There's no end to them." He finished while the skinny man surprisingly grew in size and became very muscular, with his posture now matching the size of his attire. "There is an end," the man answered with a deep voice and his signature smile, getting the attention of the people in front of him, who immediately got excited by his presence. "Why?" the man questioned as the villain looked behind by hearing his voice and widened his eyes in shock and fear when he saw he was indeed the hero who all of the villains in Japan feared the most. "He was All Might, because I am here," All Might announced, then in a swift move, left the area and began to chase the sludge villain. As the day was getting into the afternoon and classes were ending for the day, all of the students began to leave one of the buildings of the education system, talking to each other and planning their after-school activities, just like normal junior high students would do. Our young overlord was no exception, although what he planned as his free time activity was much less social. As his classmates started to leave, Izuku took his phone out of his right pocket and opened the news on it, while Shadow observed him closely from behind. "The incident this morning is all over the headlines," Izuku noted as he scrolled down on his phone. "I have to hurry up and go home so I can write everything down in my notebook," Izuku said to himself as he put his phone back into its original location, with Shadow nodding in agreement, sharing his master's idea. Then, our protagonist grabbed his notebook in order to place it back inside his yellow backpack that he put on his desk earlier. But just as he wanted to be done with this act of his, Bakugo pulled his notebook out of his right hand with his left hand and looked at Izuku with his usual grumpy expression. "I'm not done with you yet, Deku," Bakugo declared as he observed the both of them, with Izuku performing a worried and panicked face, and with Shadow forming a frustrated expression. "Katsuki, what's that?" A student with brown hair queried, while he and another student with black hair next to him approached Bakugo, who, without saying anything, just moved his left hand backwards a little bit, showing the title of the notebook, which said Hero Analysis for the Future. As the two students read the title, they instantly began to laugh at how silly it was, embarrassing Izuku and making Shadow agitated even more. "It's fine, isn't it? Please give it back," Izuku stuttered nervously. In response, Bakugo touched the notebook with both of his hands and created a little explosion, damaging the book badly and freaking out both our young overlord and his shadowy friend, with the latter even grabbing his head in shock. But it didn't stop there. Bakugo took this even further and tossed the notebook out of the window that was behind him like it was nothing, stressing out both Izuku and Shadow even more. Most top first-string heroes have stories about them from their school days. Bakugo started, looking at them unfeelingly as Izuku trembled in fear, lowered his ears and tail, and Shadow observed Bakugo more furiously than ever. "I want the shine of being able to be called the only student to make it into UA from this mediocre city junior high," he stated. I'm a perfectionist," the explosive teenager remarked self-confidently. "And a cocky person," the black-haired kid thought in his head. "So anyway," Bakugo began, leaning closer to Izuku and putting his left hand on Izuku's right shoulder and releasing a bunch of smoke from his palm in order to threaten Izuku with this, which was obviously successful. "Don't apply to UA at all, nerd," he threatened Izuku, who got so scared that he couldn't even say one word. After witnessing this, Shadow instantly became alarmed and shifted into protective mode, grabbing Bakugo's hand with his right hand in the process. Bakugo moved his head upwards and looked at the enraged Shadow, observing his red eyes full of rage, while the two other kids stepped back a little bit in worry. "Whatever," Bakugo said, removing his left hand from Izuku's shoulder. Then, he and his friends decided to walk towards the door in order to exit the classroom, leaving the trembling Izuku alone with his shadowy companion, who was back to his normal form, and try to comfort his master. But before he stepped out of the room, Bakugo had one more thing to say to Izuku. So, to accomplish this, he turned his head a little bit, just enough to set his eyes upon our young overlord. "If you want to be a hero, I have a quick solution for that," Bakugo stated, then began to tell Izuku his perfect idea about how to become a hero. "If you believe you're going to be reborn as a hero in your next life and dive off from the roof," he counseled cruelly, crossing a certain line with his comment. Although he was really peaceful, if he was allowed to, Shadow would have immediately attacked after this remark of his to let out his full rage on him. Even the frightened Izuku couldn't take this statement without saying anything. So, with an expression of fright and anger, he turned his head in the direction of his childhood friend and was about to say something back, but was instantly shut down by Bakugo's intimidating face. "What?" he questioned as a few tiny explosions popped from his right palm, making Izuku absolutely forget what he wanted to say. With this, Bakugo and his buddies finally left the classroom, leaving Izuku and Shadow alone at last. After they left, Izuku, while processing the bullying, shakily backed up everything, zipped his backpack, placed it on his back, and just like Bakugo, he too left the classroom, while Shadow followed him with a concerned look due to his worry for his master's emotional well-being. Not long after, they exited the building and began their journey towards the home of Izuku, while Izuku thought over what Bakugo said. How could he advise something like that? If Izuku did that, that would mean suicide instigated by Bakugo. Was he that dumb? Although the idea of suicide was ridiculous for him, if he did it, he would end up in hell forever with his father, aunt, uncle, Miss Rosie, Miss Minzy, and Mello. But it would also shatter his mother's heart into a million pieces, and he never ever wanted that. As Izuku thought about this, Shadow continued to levitate next to him, keeping an eye on him, when suddenly, he noticed something in the corner of his jungle green eyes. He looked at his right side and noticed something that was really important for his master. With his left hand, he tapped Izuku's right shoulder several times, getting his attention. Without saying anything, our green broccoli head looked at his shadowy friend, who, after he observed him, pointed at the small pool next to them with his left pitch-black hand. Izuku looked at the direction Shadow pointed at and widened his eyes when he saw what Shadow pointed at. Inside a small pool filled with water, his damaged notebook was floating at the surface of the water, while 3 koi fish tried to consume it, thinking that it was food. "That's not fish food, stupid," Izuku stated in a low-spirited tone as he and Shadow got closer to the pool. "That's my notebook." He noted as reached out for his notebook and grabbed it with his left hand, scaring the fish away and observing his notebook. "Bert." Our young Cambion mumbled in frustration with his self-learned French, almost at the edge of crying as he looked at the notebook. Fortunately for him, this didn't go unnoticed by Shadow, who put his left hand on his master's right shoulder in a supporting and comforting manner. Feeling this sudden touch, Izuku turned his head to observe his shadowy friend with a smile on his face and felt a little bit eased by this, knowing that no matter what happened, Shadow always helped him and comforted him. After this, he simply kept the notebook in his right hand, and with Shadow by his side, Izuku continued his way in the direction of his living place. Their walk was as long, quiet, and boring as usual, until, at halfway, they reached a short tunnel that they went through every day. Both he and Shadow casually entered the tunnel, and with regular steps, our green beanie started to go through it while his shadowy friend flew next to him. They even reached the middle of the tunnel, going over a manhole cover as they headed towards the end of the tunnel. But just as they got a little bit of distance from the manhole cover, something unexpected happened. As they got farther from the manhole cover in silence, some kind of sludge-like substance began to ascend from its holes, accompanied by a strange flowing sound. Hearing this sound, both Izuku and Shadow turned around to see the cause of the sound and shot their eyes in shock and utter fear as the sludge grew larger and obtained 2 eyes and a large mouth, becoming the same sludge villain that robbed a shop not long ago. Izuku flattened his ears and tail in terror as he watched the villain loom over him and Shadow, who also lowered his pitch black. The adrenaline flowed through every vein inside Izuku's body, triggering one choosable reaction: fight or flight. Izuku chose the latter. The young overlord rotated his full body in the opposite direction and proceeded to flee, but was stopped by the sludge villain, who jumped into the air and leaped at our hero, causing him to drop his notebook, covering him with his slimy body and putting a tentacle on his mouth, thus not allowing him to breathe. "Don't worry, I'm just going to take over your body. Calm down," the sludge villain stated as he held his tentacle on Izuku's nose and mouth in order to suffocate him. "It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. You'll be better soon," he assured as he proceeded to literally kill a teenager. Izuku tried to grab the slimy tentacle with his short clawed hand and pull it off of his face while Shadow, turning into his protective mode immediately, began to claw the sludge villain's body with his sharp talons in order to cause him pain and free his master, but to no avail. "Thanks for the help, kid. You're my hero," the villain noted, then continued. "I didn't think that had come to the city. I had to hide somewhere," he said, holding his grip on our young Cambion. Izuku could feel his strength leave his body, making Shadow dig his talons deeper into the liquid body of the sludge villain in a desperate attempt. It seemed like there was no way to escape. Izuku couldn't teleport because he was held back by the villain. He didn't have enough power to even snap with his fingers to summon 2 tentacles. And he couldn't even use his beginner voodoo magic abilities because he didn't obtain his voodoo book. This was really the end for him? Was he really going to die? Before the inevitable came for him, with tearful eyes and blurry vision, he looked at the open notebook of his that showed a future hero costume drawn by himself, then closed his eyes and prepared himself for what was about to come. Suddenly, with a loud sound, the manhole cover flew into the air, making both Shadow and the sludge villain observe the source of the sound, shocking both the sludge villain and Shadow by seeing the person who exited the hole. "It's all right now, young man," All Might declared as he fully climbed out of the manhole, stomped on the ground with his right foot, and straightened his huge posture, holding the same plastic bag in his left hand. "Because I am here," he announced, readying himself. "Shit!" The sludge villain cursed in panic as he extended a tentacle and shot it out towards All Might in an attempt of hitting him. However, All Might simply dodged it by crouching down, making the villain hit the top of the tunnel. Then, the number 1 leaped forward, closing a little bit of distance with the villain. The sludge villain stretched out another tentacle in the direction of the hero, who stopped at midway and raised his muscular right arm, preparing himself to unleash his attack. "Texas Smash!" All Might shouted as he clenched his right hand into a fist, gathered as much as power he could, and released it in the form of a strong wind, causing the extended arm to fall apart. Shortly after, the huge gust of wind reached the villain and Shadow, making Izuku's shadowy companion fly out of the tunnel. The sludge villain tried to battle against the sheer power, but to no avail. The wind pressure was so strong that the villain couldn't keep his body in whole anymore and splashed it into a million pieces, thus freeing Izuku. It looked like time slowed down for a moment as our protagonist opened his eyes slightly after he got freed and observed his savior. While Izuku witnessed his favorite hero doing his well-known work, his vision became blurry and his eyelids began to feel heavier and heavier to the point that he couldn't keep his eyes open. At last, he shut down his visionary organs and lost his consciousness, not allowing him to feel the hit of the concrete. "Hey, hey!" someone said as he gently patted the young overlord's face with his right hand, making him slowly open his eyes. When he unlocked his visionary organs, he looked up and saw his savior in front of him, who of course, was not other than All Might himself. And he was not alone. Behind his back, a worried Shadow was floating, observing his now conscious master with his jungle green eyes in his normal form. "Thank goodness," All Might remarked calmly, now being ensured that the kid didn't hurt himself. Our protagonist instantly straightened his ears and tail and shot his eyes wide in utter shock by witnessing his favorite hero in front of him and immediately crawled a few meters away from All Might. Still completely shocked by his appearance and causing Shadow to fly to his master in order to check on him. Fortunately, this reaction didn't even surprise All Might, who just straightened his body and went on looking at our green broccoli head, continuing his monologue. "I'm glad you're okay. Your Shadow has been worried about you," All Might stated as Shadow, after checking his masters, wrapped his body around the still shocked Izuku in gladness, now calmed down due to knowing that his master was all right. "Sorry about getting you into caught up in my villain fighting. I usually don't make mistakes like this, but I was in high spirits on my day off in a new place." He apologized, then laughed gleefully as he placed his right hand on his forehead and our protagonist witnessed him. "But thanks to you, I was able to catch him safely," the #1 hero announced, showing off the 2 torrent bottles in his hands, filled with the collected parts of the sludge villain. Izuku was still in disbelief. He couldn't believe what he saw. His favorite heroine of all time, All Might, was standing in front of him in the flesh. It was like a dream come true. As he observed his role model show him the now knocked-out villain, a thought appeared in his mind which usually led to an act that most of the hero fans did when they met their favorite heroes, making him break out of his confusion. He had to ask for an autograph from him. "Oh, right, an autograph. Where should I?" he inquired as he searched for a book in panic after he got out of Shadow's light grip. After a little bit of looking around, he noticed his notebook laying on the ground. "In that notebook," he noted, grabbing his notebook and opening it at a random page. To his utter surprise, there was already an autograph on the page, written by All Might himself. He already did. Izuku declared in shock as he observed the autograph. Izuku jumped to his feet in a flash and performed 90-degree bows several times. Thank you very much. It'll be an heirloom, a family treasure," Izuku remercied, repeating his bows while All Might put the bottles into the pockets of his jeans and made a thumbs up to our hero's statement. "Well, I need to take this guy to the police," All Might remarked as he turned around and patted the bottle in his left pocket with his left hand. "See you again on the other side of the screen," he stated as he lifted up his right hand as a form of saying goodbye, then began to stretch his legs. "Wait, already?" Izuku wondered worriedly. "Pros are constantly fighting enemies and time," the symbol of peace noted, continuing the stretching of his legs. Izuku wanted to ask something crucial, but he stopped midway. Ever since he got his quirk and Bakugo's bullying began, he had always wondered about his capabilities for one single reason. Was he able to become a hero with a quirk like his? He needed an answer. And who wasn't better in answering his question than the symbol of peace himself? But should he ask All Might's opinion about his dream? Should he ask him the question that lingered in his mind for a long time? What if All Might didn't care about it? No, he wouldn't be like that. But what if he didn't have time for a Deku like him? Izuku just didn't know what to do and time was running out. Fortunately, somebody noticed his uncertainty. As our young Cambion's insecure thoughts ran through his head, Shadow started to levitate towards All Might, getting the attention of his master. "Shadow, what are you doing?" he quizzed nervously as his shadowy friend reached All Might. "Well then, I'm counting on you," All Might told as he was about to leap away, when he felt a tap on his right shoulder. Noticing this, he turned his head to the right in order to see the person who approached. It was the living of the kid he had just saved. With his well-known wide smile, he observed the Shadow looking at him for a reason. "What can I help you, my friend?" All Might inquired from Shadow, who, in response, raised his left arm and pointed at his master, making All Might look at Izuku, realizing something as he witnessed our young overlord. "Oh, you wanted to ask something, young man?" he wondered as he stood up from his crouch. "What?" Izuku quizzed in confusion. "I'm sorry I didn't notice it. I was so caught up with handing this guy to the authorities that I almost forgot that a fan was behind me," All Might explained, laughing gleefully and turning his full attention to Izuku. "So, what do you have in mind?" he queried as Shadow flew back to Izuku. "Well, Izuku started unsurely, not knowing if he should tell All Might what he wanted to ask. But at the moment his face was covered with unsureness. Shadow came to help his master. He lifted his left hand and placed it on his master's right shoulder in a comforting manner, making him look at him and ensuring him with the fact that he should ask what he was curious about. As he observed his shadowy friend, our young Cambion morphed a small smile on his face, knowing that he had Shadow's support like always. Then, he gulped down a bit of saliva in his throat, prepared himself to ask his question, and opened his mouth to speak. "Even if I have a strange quirk, can I become a hero?" Izuku confessed as he felt like a large boulder fell off of his heart after he asked this. "A strange quirk?" All Might wondered, surprised by this question. "What do you mean by that?" "I have a rather unusual quirk, and I don't know if I would be fit as a hero," Izuku explained nervously, scratching the back of his head in nervousness. "May I take a look at it, young man?" All Might requested kindly. "Of course," Izuku replied anxiously, then began the process of the activation of his quirk while Shadow observed him from his right side. Our hero raised his right hand and looked at it, touched his right and right middle finger together, and with a flick of his hand, he snapped with his fingers. At that moment, two fiery portals opened next to Izuku, one on each side. From the two portals, two black tentacles emerged, obtaining almost twice the size of Izuku, surprising All Might with their appearance. Then, he turned his wrists in the direction of the tentacles and concentrated, getting his hands to glow in a green color, which was quickly shared by his tentacles. Shortly after, the aura around both his hand and the tentacles fastly disappeared, and Izuku began to move his wrist, causing the tentacles to move on his command and surprise All Might even more. "I'm capable of summoning tentacles at the maximum of 6, and I'm able to control them, but the more tentacles I summon, the harder I control them," Izuku listed as he observed and moved his tentacles. "I'm also capable of controlling the shadows of 2 people, and I'm able to teleport in a 10-meter radius with Shadow's help, and I can see through his eyes," Izuku finished as he looked back at his favorite hero, and Shadow waved with his right hand to All Might, introducing himself properly. To be honest, Izuku should have explained his voodoo magic to All Might, but he didn't want to for one simple reason. It would be really, really suspicious for a teenager to use the powers of voodoo. "I see," All Might said, then began to think about what he should say, which, after a few seconds, appeared in his mind. "Well, young man, I have to tell you something. Hero work is not easy. Villains can come from any corner and the pros risk their lives every day because of that. They're using all of their strength just to protect the people around them," the #1 hero explained, then continued. "But a true hero's power doesn't come from their quirks, it comes from the heart. It doesn't matter what kind of quirk you have, whether it's good, bad, or strange, the way you put it. And I do believe, with long and hard training, you can become a hero as well, young man," he finished with his iconic smile on his face. Izuku couldn't believe what he heard. His role model, the #1 hero of Japan and the symbol of peace, told him he can be a hero. It was like a dream come true. He didn't notice it, but in his eyes, the small tears of happiness, relief, and gratitude began to form in his eyes and roll down his cheeks. making his shadowy friend put his pitch-black left hand on his master's back in a supporting manner. When our protagonist felt his tears roll down his face, he fastly wiped them away and performed a 90-degree bow in respect and thankfulness once again. "Thank you, All Might," Izuku remercied as he stayed in his bowed-down position. "Happy to help, young man," All Might answered while Izuku raised his body up from the bow with a smile on his face. "Now, if you apologize, I must go now. I have to put this guy behind curtains," he stated, then turned around and crouched down and prepared to leap away. "And remember, I'm counting on your continued support," All Might exclaimed as jumped high into the sky as our young overlord and his shadowy companion watched him leave the location, with the latter being quite impressed by how fast and how high the symbol of peace could jump. "He's the best hero, isn't he?" Izuku remarked as he witnessed All Might disappear in the sky and his tentacles slithered back to their portals, while Shadow nodded in agreement. After All Might got out of sight completely, Izuku suddenly remembered that his mother probably waiting for him at home, so he turned around and with Shadow, they continued their journey towards their home. After a long, about 20 minutes of walking, they finally reached the apartment complex they lived. With causal steps, Izuku went up the stairs, and once he reached the one floor of the apartment he, his mother, and his shadowy friend lived in, he approached the front door, grabbed its handle, and pushed it downwards, unlocking it in the process while Shadow just observed all of this occur. When Izuku opened the door, Shadow immediately flew inside and went forward, taking a turn to the left and entering the living room, looking for his master's mother. Meanwhile, our dear Cambion stepped over the doorstep and got inside the apartment. Then, to notify his mother about his arrival, he opened his sharp-teethed mouth and started to speak. "I'm home," Izuku declared high-spiritedly after he closed the door behind his back completely. Then Izuku crouched down, untied his shoes, took them off, and headed in the direction of the living, entering it once he got there. When he looked inside, he saw his mother standing in front of a wash basin, cleaning plates and bowls while Shadow observed her act at her left side. Before speaking, Izuku morphed a small smile on his smile, glad for knowing that his mother was okay. "Hi, Mom," the young overlord greeted joyfully. Hearing her son's voice, Inko turned her head to the right side and looked at her son, forming a smile on her face by seeing her son. "Hi, sweetie," Inko welcomed happily as Shadow also looked at our green beanie. "How was the first day of school?" she wondered as she focused her attention back on the dishes and bowls she was cleaning. Hearing this question, Izuku flattened his ears and tail slightly, being reminded of the acts Bakugo did to him today. "It was quite good," Izuku replied a little bit gloomily, but not that low-spiritedly to make his mother worry about what happened to him. "I'll be in my room if you need me, Mom," he stated, then turned around and started to go towards the exit of the living room with Shadow following him from behind. "Okay, honey," Inko answered. "I'll start to make dinner as soon as I finish this. I'll let you when it's done," Inko replied, then continued to wash the dishes as Izuku stepped out of the room and began to go towards his own room while Shadow followed him. "Okay, Mom," Izuku responded, then turned around and went out of the room with his shadowy companion next to him, leaving his mother to do her own thing. After leaving the room, Izuku and Shadow headed towards our protagonist's room, and when they got to its door, Izuku made a grip on the door handle and moved downwards, allowing themselves to step inside, turn on the lights and look around. The room didn't change much throughout the years, only with the exceptions of the mic Izuku got from his father as a gift after they met for the first time, which was now larger and was standing at the right side of his desk. A new book our young overlord earned 5 years ago, and the thing he needed to see his father, a green saxophone and a music stand he got for his latest birthday and was at the left side of his desk, and the radio on our hero's desk, which he used as the method to get to hell and see his father for many years. After they entered and closed the door, he walked to his desk and put his backpack on his chair, while Shadow just floated around the room, checking for anything that would indicate that someone else was in the room besides his master's female parent. Then, after putting down his backpack on his chair, aside from his underwear, he began to take off all of his clothes. Meanwhile, Shadow flew to the wardrobe inside the room and started to look for some comfortable clothes for his master after he noticed he began to change his wearings. Right after the only clothes Izuku possessed was his underwear. Shadow presented the young Cambion with a shirt that had the title shirt on it with Japanese kanjis and light blue trousers, which our heroine nicely accepted from his shadowy friend bodyguard and put on right away. After dressing up, accompanied by Shadow, Izuku went to his backpack that was hanging down on his chair, unzipped his backpack, took out his pencil case and one of his notebooks, placed them on the surface of his desk, pulled out his chair, sat down on it, brought it closer to the desk, and proceeded to do his homework. But before that, he set his eyes upon the red vintage radio on the right side of his desk. While Shadow witnessed his master, Izuku extended his right hand in the direction of the radio, and once he turned it on, our protagonist moved his hand towards the left button of the radio and rotated it 6 times, repeating the same act in the case of the right button of the radio, thus tuning in to the 6th channel just like his mother showed him to do years ago. At the moment he tuned in to the 6th channel, a certain voice spoke out of the radio and filled the air of the room, with Izuku knowing damn well who was the one this well-known voice belonged to. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and that Technicolor river in between. I'm Alastor, and this is your beloved drama show, Vigilantes. The radio demon announced cheerfully through the radio to his son's shadowy companion, and the masses of hell. At some level, it was calming for Izuku to hear his father's voice. He couldn't send him any kind of letter, and they only saw each other on weekends. That's why I couldn't tell his father what All Might had said to him. But hearing his father's iconic voice through the radio made him feel like even though they didn't see each other at that moment, in this way, he could still stay close to his father. After Alastor started to narrate the continuation of the story of an ex-cop who left his job and began to get things into his own hands, Izuku grabbed a pencil from his pencil box and started to do his homework, while Shadow levitated to his master's right side, placed both of his arms on the desk, leaned on his left elbow, tilted his head to the left, and rested it in his left palm, listening to Alastor's show with interest. Once our young overlord was done with his homework, he joined his shadowy friend's activity as well, until his mother called out for him in order to let her son know that the dinner was ready. Hearing his mother saying his name out loud, he turned off the radio, stood up from his seat, and exited his room, with Shadow following him. After exiting his room and entering the living room kitchen, Izuku saw that his mother was already waiting for him and was sitting at the table, with his favorite meal placed on the table, which was not other than katsudon. He walked to the table and sat on a chair, facing his mother in his seat, then proceeded to eat his dinner in the company of his mother and his shadowy friend. Once he finished his dinner and remercied it for his mother, our dear heroine decided to go inside the bathroom in order to take a quick shower and clean himself. After he was done with his shower, he took on his pajamas and headed back to his room, where, before he went to bed, he grabbed his music stand, placed it in the middle of his room, chose the music sheets of a few songs written by one of his favorite jazz saxophonist and musician from his desk's drawer. Johnny Hodges put the sheets on the music stand, grabbed his saxophone with his hands, and began to play that song with his instrument just like his father taught him, letting the music of the saxophone escape through its bell as Izuku pushed down the keys of the instrument and Shadow listened to his master's music. After his practice, he put his saxophone, music sheets, and music stand back to their original places, turned the lights off, walked to his bed, and lay on it comfortably, covering himself with his All Might blanket and drifting into the realm of dreams, while Shadow changed back into his shadow form and continued to guard his master this way for the rest of the night. And like that, the first day of school had officially ended for our protagonist, making the time of the meeting between him and his father approach closer. As usual, the rest of the weekdays had passed relatively quickly, and it was now the end of the weekend, Saturday morning to be exact. The day when Izuku usually visits his father and stays with him until Sunday afternoon. Knowing this fact, Izuku excitedly jumped out of his bed around 8:30, stretched and with Shadow, who came out of his hideout right after his master got out of the bed, on his side and a bright smile on his face. He rushed out of his room, closed its door, and ran into the living room kitchen, where he saw his already awake mother, almost finished with the preparation of their breakfast. Our young Cambion fastly went to the dinner table, pulled out a chair, and sat down on it while he and Shadow observed his mother make the breakfast for herself and for her son, which was fully completed shortly after. With 2 bowls in her hands, Inko turned around, walked to the table, and placed them in front of Izuku, revealing what the bowls contained. In one of the bowls, a delicious miso soup was poured, while the other bowl was filled with rice and some grilled fish with the addition of a few vegetables in it. Izuku could feel the larger amount of saliva being produced inside his mouth as he witnessed the meals, and his mother gave him a pair of chopsticks in order to allow him to dig into his breakfast, which was the exact thing he did instantly after he grabbed his chopsticks. Once he finished his breakfast, Izuku stood up from the table, hugged his mother, said goodbye to her, went out of the living room kitchen, approached his room, and reached the door of his room. He grabbed the door handle and moved it downwards, thus unlocking it and allowing himself and Shadow to enter the room. After he opened it successfully, he stepped inside and headed straight towards his wardrobe in order to change his attire. After he reached it, he grabbed the handles of its doors and opened them wide, allowing himself and his shadowy friend to take a look at the insides of the wardrobe. Most of the clothes were regular, like jeans, shirts, and jackets, with the exception of one group of clothes that were more fancy than the rest of the wearings in it. They were the same green clothes that his father gave to him on the day they met, although these ones were way larger than the version he wore on that day in order to perfectly fit his now larger posture. Izuku grabbed those wearings, took them out of the wardrobe, put them on his bed, and began to undress, getting rid of his pajamas for the rest of the weekend and leaving only his underwear on his body. After that, for starters, our young Cambion put on the bright green dress shirt with a black cross on his chest. Then, he chose to get his long black dress pants with matching bright green cuffs on himself, which was followed by putting on his green pinstripe coat with dark green lapels piped with white that was ragged along the bottom hem. As the last part of his almost finished attire, Izuku decided to possess his black gloves that green color at the fingertips, his black pointed toe boots with green deer hoofprints emblazoned on the soles, and his black bow tie with a bright green center, which was knotted with the help of Shadow. After thanking for the kind help of his shadowy friend and dressing up fully, he walked to a shelf full of books and began to search for the book he got from his father, which he found not long after. The spine of the book had a dark red, indicating that the whole book had this color. Izuku grabbed the spine of the book with his right hand and began to pull it out, freeing it from the pile of books. After getting the book into his hands, he turned the book in order to open it and to see its front cover, which was occupied by a huge, bright red-colored pentagram. He unlocked the book and opened it at the part he needed at that moment, then began to read the red voodoo symbols in it out loud in the right order and closed his eyes in order to start the ritual he needed to perform. Papa Legba, Loco, Calfu, Santa Muerte, Marasa. He chanted as his hair began to move on its own, like it was blown by the wind. Ogaun, Kuzenzaka, Aizen, Agui, Simbai. Izuku continued as a red light started to emit around him and various voodoo symbols surrounded him. Meanwhile, Shadow just witnessed all of this happen. Baron Sandy, Grand Bridget, Erzuile Frida, Erzuile Dantor, Mylakin. Our broccoli head finished as he opened his now illuminating and fully white eyes, and a large, spinning, bright red pentagram appeared around his body, floating horizontally around him and emitting a red light upwards. Then, the pentagram moved away from Izuku and levitated itself to the nearest wall, changing its position to be perpendicular to the floor of the room and touching the wall by a 90-degree turn. Afterwards, the pentagram began to spin faster and faster, until the lines of the circle part of the hellish symbol turned into a ring made out of fire, while the star and the rest of the pentagram vanished completely and was replaced with a circle-shaped bright red light, serving as the entrance of the newly formed portal. Once the creation of the portal was complete, the sudden wind and the green voodoo symbols disappeared and Izuku's eyes changed back to normal, losing their glowing white light and getting their white sclere, green irises, and black, circular pupils back. As our protagonist closed his book and observed the calling gate of the portal, Shadow flew to his master, grabbed his shoulder, and witnessed the portal as well from behind his master's back, getting his attention. "Are you ready?" Izuku wondered from his shadowy companion, who nodded with his head in agreement. With his answer being acquired, Izuku looked back at the portal and started to approach it, while Shadow returned to his shadow form. When he was less than a meter away from it, Izuku inhaled deeply and let out a deep sigh, preparing himself for the cross between the realms, and so, with his voodoo book in his right hand, he stepped inside the portal and accessed Hell, making the portal close and vanished from sight as he fully entered it. Shortly after he stepped into it, Izuku came out at the other side of the portal and looked around the area as he fully exited the gate between the human world and hell, and the portal closed itself behind him. But as he observed the location, he realized one crucial fact: he was not in his father's house at all. Instead, he was in the middle of the lobby of a huge building. The inside of the building was rather luxurious, with the walls possessing a red color and a bunch of strange, black symbols that looked like family crests. The walls were also decorated with gold-colored paneling and fancy lamps between the panelings, with the upper parts of the walls covered with golden eyes. There was also a second floor in the lobby, with the wall of the second sharing the color as the other walls of the lobby and obtaining a few goldish glassed windows. An entrance of a dark room in the middle of the second floor was placed, which was accompanied by a pair of red curtains, while the edge of the second floor was acquired by a gold-colored handrail that possessed balusters that formed various half-opened and fully opened eyes across the handrail, preventing any demons to fall off. The floor of the lobby was dark red and had a huge, gold-colored hexagon that possessed lines that were connected from its vertices to a circle at the center of the two-dimensional figure, which was the exact part Izuku was standing on. Although our young Cambion didn't get the attention of it, at his left side, the wall of the lobby obtained a huge hat symbol with two canes that formed an X shape on it, and a really fancy fireplace with golden corbel, which had an eye in the middle, golden surrounds, and a circular-shaped firebox. In front of the fireplace, there was an old-fashioned, 1950s-styled television, a trio of furniture, a lavish red armchair with a golden frame, and two sofas with the same color palette as the armchair to be exact, that surrounded a small table with the same colors, forming an imaginary triangle. And, which was more surprising, was that they were occupied by a few demons. Izuku watched in awe as he observed the beautiful interior of the structure, but, unfortunately for him, his look around was quickly stopped by a sharp, holy spear pointed at his face, wielded by a female demon, causing our hero to lift his hand into the air in surrender and drop his voodoo book on the floor. The demon woman was as tall as Izuku and had a slim body, which possessed muted gray lavender-colored skin. Her hair was white and obtained a jagged, moth-like shape to the cut, with gray lavender stripes at the ends. Her right eye had an ivory-white iris and a light pink sclere. Meanwhile, her left eye was missing and was replaced by a dark reddish-pink X on a slate-gray eye patch. The demon lady was wearing a dark pink blouse with a dark slate-gray Peter Pan-style collar, scallop trim to the sleeves, and two buttons down the front, while her choker and skirt acquired the same dark slate-gray color. She accessorized long slate-gray fingerless gloves and long thigh-high stockings, which were scalloped with white at the tops and the tips of the toes. The demon held her spear to our young overlord's face and looked at Izuku with outright alarm and anger, scaring him. "Stop right there," the female demon ordered angrily, keeping her spear in place and cursing something under her breath in Spanish. "Who the hell are you? How could you get here?" the moth-based demon questioned, demanding an answer from Izuku. But she didn't get any. Izuku was too frightened to even open his mouth. Not just because they threatened him with a holy spear, but because of one thing, her left eye. That type of eye shook him to his very core. Not because he knew the demon in front of him. It was due to something else. He only witnessed that kind of eye once, but that faithful encounter was enough for him to carve it into the deepest parts of his mind forever, and fear those who acquired those eyes. Meanwhile, as this event occurred, another female demon began to approach them. She was a tall, slender demon, having the height of 6 feet or over. She possessed white skin and long, blonde hair with lighter blonde and pink highlights, which was tied into a twice-banded low ponytail. Her blonde bangs were flipped to her left with a curl. She also acquired black lips and rosy red cheeks. She had gray eyeliners, red eyes, with her sclere being light yellow, and thick black eyelashes, both top and bottom. She accessorized a small black bow tie and black suspenders, with an addition of an untucked white, long-sleeved dress shirt. Over this dress shirt, she wore a fitted red tuxedo jacket with dark red lapels and a pair of red fitted pants. As the last part of her attire, she was wearing black and white saddle shoes on her feet. The female demon walked to them, and as she did so, she morphed a concerned expression on her face, worried for both her girlfriend and our young Cambion. "Vaggie, calm down," the demon woman soothed, referring to her romantic partner as Vaggie. "He's just a sinner. I think he doesn't want any harm." she assured, putting her supportive right hand on Vaggy's left shoulder. No, Charlie, he's not, Vaggy answered frustratedly back to her girlfriend called Charlie, not taking her eyes off of Izuku in the process. A human? Charlie questioned, getting starry eyes and becoming truly excited instantly as she heard this come out of her girlfriend's mouth. Well, that's pretty fucked up, a male sinner remarked as he walked towards the trio. Just for a split second, Izuku looked away from the moth demon and set his eyes upon the demon who made this remark. And, truth to be told, he was quite surprised by his appearance. The sinner was slim, had 2 pair of arms, and was really tall, standing at an approximate height of 8 feet, thus larger than his father. The fur of the sinner was white, and he had a mop of fluffy white hair that extended from both the front and back of his head, with splotches of light pink across it. He also possessed a distinctive and focal light pink heart pattern on the back of his head. The light pink outline of a heart also encircled his chest, the bottom point of which extends past his waistband and down to his crotch area, although that was not visible due to the long light pink suit blazer with horizontal white stripes down the length. His eyelids were light pink and the color extended up to his eyebrows, giving the effect of eyeshadow, and his lashes were dark and thick. His irises were cerise pink. His right eye had a light yellow sclere, while his left eye possessed a dark sclere. The wide mouth of the sinner demon was full of sharp, white, pointed teeth, with the exception of one single golden fang that sat slightly to his right of center. He also had 3 cerise pink dots under each of his eyes which seemed like freckles, but in truth, which Izuku didn't know, they were actually another set of smaller eyes. He obtained a prominent chest, which was entirely composed of fluffy fluff. Beside his suit blazer, he sported a reddish-gray miniskirt, long reddish-gray thigh-high-heeled boots, accessorized with a reddish-gray bow tie with a cerise pink center and a black choker. On his top set of arms, he obtained cerise pink gloves with white detailing on the cuffs, while on the bottom set of arms, he wore long white gloves. He was the popular gay porn star of Hell, Angel Dust. That's complete nonsense. A living mortal cannot access the afterlife. A demon, resembling a snake, hissed as he slithered to the group, making our protagonist turn his head to his right side, witnessing him from the corner of his eyes. The sinner's outlook was quite unique and bizarre at the same time. He had a slender body, red sclere, black narrowed pupils, and a mouth filled with sharp, yellow teeth, with his upper canine teeth being much longer, just like the teeth of a real snake. The color of his predominant body was charcoal gray. He also had a yellow cobra hood, which was closed at the moment, was tipped with black, and featured 4 cerise eye patterns which spread across the center. He possessed a long neck and a tail that were charcoal gray, with thick yellow stripes featuring a row of cerise eyes running down the length of his tail. He was wearing a jacket in a matching charcoal gray, pinstriped with yellow, while the jacket had an open breast area that revealed a yellow underlayer. He also acquired a black bow tie on his neck with a cerise eye as its center. On his hands, he had black fingerless gloves with yellow dots on each knuckle on his hands and sharp, cerise claws. As the last part of his attire, at the top of his head, he was obtaining a large top hat which had a large singular cerise eye in the center of it. The top hat possessed many sharp, yellow teeth and yellow glassed goggles at its bottom part, which were probably used by the owner of the top hat. As he witnessed the arriving snake-like demon, his observation was suddenly interrupted by 2 white hands with black nails gently touching his cheeks. "I've never seen a human before. I didn't know they look like this. How great!" Charlie cooed as she softly squeezed Izuku's cheeks, making him flatten his ears a little bit and slightly blush in embarrassment. However, the joy of the Princess of Hell was cut short by her girlfriend moving the spear closer to the face of our protagonist, making Charlie let go of his cheeks. "Don't touch him, Charlie. Who knows what he plans in his mind?" The moth-based demon woman alerted, then focused her attention back to Izuku. "So you better tell me how you got here before I do something that I'll regret later," Vaggy ordered, holding her spear close to Izuku's face. Still, Izuku couldn't move one bit. He was too afraid of Vaggy, as the other female demon called her. It seemed like this was an end for him. But fortunately, someone came to the rescue. Someone he didn't expect to be there. "Oi, bitch, leave the kid alone," a demon shouted towards Vaggy with grumpiness and a really little bit of anger, causing all of them to look at him. As Izuku turned his head to the right and observed the person who had just spoken up, he widened his eyes in shock. Behind the bar counter of the Caviar Bar, which his name was visible on the board above the bar counter and had skeletons, bones, card suits, and candles, indicating that the bar was a casino as well, was an anthropomorphic black-furred, black suspenders, red bow tie, and black top hat wearing, grumpy avian cat Sinner, who Izuku knew well for a long time. And he was not alone. On the counter, a black and white furred, with the white spots of its ears forming a heart, when close together, yellow sclerad, red irised, black narrow-pupiled, really long-tailed cat, with a red collar on its neck, was laying, seemingly bored, not even surprised by the sudden shouting. "I won't," Baggy replied furiously, pulling her spear away. "This is serious, Husk. There's a human teenager here who accessed hell and we don't know how." "Uncle Husk? What are you doing here?" Izuku questioned with a mixture of confusion and surprise as he slowly lowered his arms, still a bit frightened but more calmed, knowing that someone he knew was close. "Uncle?" the rest of the group exclaimed in absolute shock, widening their eyes as they heard this statement. "I thought you were at the Jackpot Hotel," he noted as he observed his uncle. "I was, before your asshole of a dad pulled me into this charity bullshit. Now, I'm stuck here all alone until your dad doesn't think of something else," he explained, then grabbed a bottle of alcohol with his right hand and began to gulp down the alcoholic beverage without hesitation. "You're never alone, Husky," Angel remarked in a flirtatious tone, making the group of demons ignore his remark and causing Husk to roll his eyes in annoyance, while a really, really small amount of blush appeared on his cheeks, and Izuku looked at the spider demon with confusion, raising his right eyebrow in the process. Then, our young Cambion turned his head and witnessed his drinking uncle once again. "So, he put you here against your will?" our heroine inquired from Husk, who, to answer his nephew's question, stopped in the drinking of his beverage and looked back at him. "Pretty much," Husk answered with his casual bored tone. Yep, that indeed sounded like his father. Izuku knew that this habit of his was quite regular, so he was not surprised that much. And, for the brighter side, his uncle's answer confirmed that his father was nearby. He needed to know where he was. So, to know this, he opened his mouth and asked one last question from the anthropomorphic cat demon. Did you see him somewhere?" Izuku queried. "I didn't, and I don't fucking care where the fuck he is. But I'm guessing that psycho is in his room right now," Husk replied, then continued the consumption of his alcoholic drink. "Thank you, Uncle," Izuku remercied, which to Husk reacted by making a thumbs up with his left hand. Then, when Charlie was about to ask what was all of this, a sudden gasp stopped her from doing that, making everyone, with the exceptions of Husk and the one-eyed cat, turn around and look at the one who let this gasp out. And when they did, they saw a certain short, Cyclops female sinner in her 1950s maid dress, observing our protagonist with pure excitement in her eye. "Izuku, my sweet little baby," Nifty exclaimed as she ran from the back of the demon cast to Izuku, then jumped into the air high enough to reach her only nephew's head and hugged it with her black hands, balancing her body by stretching her legs and touching his body with them, shocking the group of demons even more in the process. "Auntie Nifty," Izuku questioned as his aunt embraced his head with her hug, "did Dad recruit you too?" he wondered with a small smile, now calmed down completely. "Yep, and I really enjoy to be here. I have so much cleaning to do," Nifty replied, observing her nephew while smile morphed on her face. "You've grown so much since I last saw you," she remarked as she looked Izuku in the eye. "But that was like 2 weeks ago," Izuku stated smilingly. "For me, you always grow every time I see you," Nifty giggled, making Izuku chuckle as well. After this little joking, Nifty raised her head and witnessed Izuku's hair, when she spotted something disastrous. From her perspective, Izuku's hair was a complete disaster, while in real life, it was as fluffy as always. But that didn't stop her from doing something with it. "Oh my gosh, Izuku," she exclaimed in disbelief. "What's the problem, Auntie?" Izuku inquired. "Your hair, it's so messy," Nifty pointed out, observing her nephew once again. "We have to do something about it," she stated, then proceeded to fastly climb up to his right shoulder and stand on it, taking out a hairbrush from her right pocket with her right hand once she was on his shoulder and beginning the brushing of her nephew's hair, when Husk interrupted her act. You don't fucking need to brush the kid's hair all the goddamn time. Husk responded as he put down his now empty beer bottle, grabbed a wine glass with his left hand and a red towelette with his right hand, and began to polish the wine glass. No, I have to. His hair is always messy and someone always has to fix it, Nifty disputed, turning her head in the direction of the alcoholic cat demon. You just believe it to be messy, Cyclops. It's just his neutral hairstyle. Husk argued back, not even looking at the cockroach demon. It will always go back to its original form. You can't do shit about that. He finished, continuing the cleaning of the wine glass. At least I care about how he looks, she whispered in disagreement, making Husk twitch his ears once this remark hit his auditory organs, lift his head up, and look at Nifty. What? Husk questioned with a little bit of anger in his voice. Nothing. Nifty answered back innocently, making Husk observe her for a short amount of time and go back to his job. Then turned her head and focused her full attention on her nephew. Now, stay still, Izuku. Let your aunt do the job for you, Nifty said, starting to kindly brush Izuku's hair. To be honest, Izuku never cared about if Nifty brushed his hair. He kinda enjoyed it even. And in a way, this showed the affection of his aunt towards him. The rest of the group just stood there in utter shock after witnessing all of this. This human teenager, who by some mysterious method could come down to hell, knew Husk and Nifty, and, which was even stranger, he called them his uncle and aunt. They tried to find some in it, but it was completely pointless. It just didn't make any sense. The Princess of Hell, Charlie Morningstar, thought this as well, until she noticed something in Izuku's appearance. As she examined his body by observing it with her eyes, she noticed that this human kid had the same ears, antlers, and the type of clothes of a certain deal-making overlord who came to the hotel a couple of days. And this kid even knew the two sinners who were brought by that powerful demon. But no, it can't be. It makes even more sense. Sinners are known to be incapable of reproducing. It's impossible. But all of these things she got attention of led to that single answer. So, after gulping a small amount of saliva down on her throat, she opened her mouth and raised the question that which she would get the unthinkable answer. So, you're here for your father? Charlie queried nervously, making her girlfriend, the famous Pawn Star, and the wannabe overlord look at her in surprise by hearing her ask this. Yes. Izuku answered anxiously and shyly after being reminded by her that he was not alone in the lobby with his aunt and uncle. And may I ask who is your father exactly? Charlie wondered with both curiosity and nervosity. It's me, of course, someone stated as he approached the group, making everyone look at the demon. Aside from Husk, Nifty, and Izuku, everyone widened their eyes in utter shock when they saw the demon who was approaching the group and said this statement. It was Alastor, the radio demon, with his well-known wide smile morphed on his face, showing off his mouth full of sharp yellow teeth and keeping his hand behind his back. No effing way, Angel Dust remarked in shock. How? That's impossible, Vaggie stated in shock as well. It's impossible for sinners to have children, she pointed out in disbelief. Maybe improbable, but not impossible, Alastor remarked as he got to his son's location and stopped at his left side. Hey, Dad, Izuku greeted his father smilingly, while Shadow finally came out of his hiding spot, being incapable of doing it due to the aura of Vaggie's holy spear, and Nifty finished the brushing of his hair, making it look like the hair of the radio demon, and climbed down off of the body of her nephew, positioning herself at his right side. It is a pleasure to see you once again as well, my boy, Alastor noted, patting the head of his son, messing his newly brushed hair up a little. Hey, Nifty exclaimed frustratedly, I've just finished brushing it, she pouted. Oh, I'm truly sorry, my dear Nifty. I promise I'll be more careful next time. The radio demon apologized cheerfully, smiling at his cockroach sinner servant. Then, he turned his head and set his upon his only child. I must apologize for my rudeness for not sending a letter and informing you about the new business I had joined, my dear boy, Izuku. I attempted to let you know about this investment, but I was so occupied with it that I didn't have the time for it. He explained, then continued. Oh, well, none of that matters now. You're already here, and it appears to me that you have already met the Princess of Hell and the little friends of hers, Alastor stated, causing our young Cambion to shoot his visionary organs wide by this statement. Princess? Izuku stuttered in shock and anxiety. then proceeded to turn his head in the direction of Charlie and instantly began to perform several 90-degree bows fastly, surprising and confusing the rest of the main cast. "It's an honor to meet you, Your Highness. I'm Izuku Midoriya," he introduced himself as he bowed to Charlie a lot of times. "Quit freaking out, kid. It's not that damn important," Husk noted boredly, and without feeling as he was about to polish another wine glass. "It's important, Uncle. The Princess of Hell is here," Izuku said back in total nervousness as he stopped his bows and looked at his uncle in panic. "Just call me Charlie," the Princess of Hell clarified with a small, awkward smile on her face. "I'm deeply sorry. It's an honor to meet you, Princess of Hell. See, Charlie," Izuku corrected, proceeding another 90-degree bow as Charlie observed him with a confused look. Then, in his panicked state, Izuku came to a serious realization that, in his mind, was unacceptable to be presented in front of a royal, causing him to stop in his bowing. "Tyrer, I should have dressed more properly," he stated in a panicked state as he looked over his clothes. "Oh, do not say such nonsense like that, my boy. You're as elegant and well-suited as always," Alastor assured while Nifty nodded in agreement. "Now, with this introduction out of the way, may I ask how was the first week of your new education year? Was it delightful?" he wondered as joyfully as always, making his son widen his eyes slightly, surprised by this question, and remember back to everything that happened on this week. "Yeah, it was good," Izuku answered as he reminded himself of the bullying Bakugo made him suffer, flattening his ears and tail and causing Shadow to witness his master with a concerned expression, which didn't go unnoticed by his father. "Are you certain about that, my boy? Because your ears say otherwise," Alastor pointed out with surprising concern, which he attempted to hide behind his broad smile. "Is it because of the nightmares, or is it due to that Bakugo lad?" he queried as Nifty, Shadow, and even the grumpy Husk looked at our hero when the nightmares were mentioned. "K. Kaken," Izuku replied in a low tone as he looked away from his father and witnessed the dark red floor. "Oh, my dear boy, we've been over this. I've told you just ignore his uneducated remarks and wait until he gets bored of it," Alastor advised his son fatherly, then continued, "and when it happens, crush him into the ground so hard that he would fall into the pits of humiliation and failure." The radio demon finished evilly with pure excitement by imagining the fall of his son's bully, sharing the same feeling with his little Cyclops servant. "Yeah, then maim and dismember him slowly and painfully," Nifty added as she obtained an insane smile on her face while she imagined herself tearing apart a literal teenager, which she didn't care about due to the fact that she knew damn well Bakugo caused her little nephew a lot of pain and misery. "No, I can't do that," our protagonist denied in worry and panic, which went completely ignored by the former duo. "Do not worry, my boy, we won't do that, maybe," Alastor ensured, not calming down his son at all due to him knowing that his father found pleasure in these things. "Now, it's time to cure that sadness of yours out of you. And I have the perfect antidote," he stated, then turned around in the direction of a hallway while he observed his son. "Come, my boy, I'll present you your future room where you'll spend this weekend. Then we're going to listen to some calming jazz and make jambalaya that could raise hell," he announced, finishing his statement with a joyful laugh and proceeding to walk away with his son and his shadowy friend. "No, I won't allow it," Vaggie declared in fury, running and holding her spear in her hands in front of the radio demon. "Oh, do not fret, Miss Vagatha. I'm sure we can accomplish an agreement on the serious topic of my son's staying place," Alastor said, not even flinched by the holy weapon near his face. "No, I would never agree to that," the female moth demon denied with pure anger in her voice. "Vaggie," Charlie started as she approached her girlfriend in a comforting manner. "Do not Vaggie to me," Vaggie snapped back at her girlfriend. "It's far enough that this Feralero came here. I won't let another radio freak stay here. Call my son like that again and suffer the consequences," Alastor warned, showing off his demonic form slightly by speaking without moving his mouth, extending his antlers and claws a little bit, and shifting his pupils into radio dials, neither surprising nor frightening Vaggie in the process. "Guys, stop. That's enough," Charlie demanded as she ran between the radio demon and her girlfriend in order to separate them and stop this argument, not wanting anyone to get hurt. But unfortunately for her, This attempt was unsuccessful, and the two former sinners continued their argument while Izuku, Shadow, and the rest of the demon observed them, with Izuku feeling a little bit ashamed of himself for causing this trouble for them. Meanwhile, as he witnessed the dark red floor, a certain spider-based male demon and snake-based sinner approached him, stopping in their tracks slithering when they reached our protagonist and his aunt, with the spider-based sinner reaching down for Izuku's book with his upper left arm. He had dropped this, Angel said as he stopped behind Nifty, gaining the attention of our hero and offering him his dropped voodoo book. Thank you. Izuku stammered as he witnessed the demon and grabbed the book with his right hand, then put it into his left hand. You're welcome, Angel answered, then turned his head and began to observe the argument, just like Nifty. Y'all get used to it. What? Izuku queried as he and Shadow looked at the spider demon. To the shitless amounts of shitty arguments. You'll get used to it. The gay porn star repeated as he turned his head to the left and witnessed our young overlord. Oh, thanks, he stuttered as he tried to mercy the advice of the sinner, but he was stopped due to not knowing the name of the demon. Angel Dust, Toots. The spider-based sinner replied, introducing himself, and I'm gonna say, I'm kinda jealous of ya. Angel Dust remarked, confusing both Izuku and Shadow while Nifty continued to watch the argument between Alastor and Vaggie. Why? What do you mean by being jealous of me? Izuku quizzed in confusion, raising an eyebrow. You can call Al Daddy all the goddamn time. He always Trina kill me when I call him Daddy while I only want him to fuck me. Heck, even giving him a blowjob would be enough, Angel Dust announced, catching both Izuku and his shadowy companion completely off guard. Dare to touch me even once, I'll rip your dick off and shove it so far up in your ass you'll be coughing cum for a month. Alastor cautioned, stopping his argument with Vaggie for a short amount of time, turning his head towards Angel, looking at him, and presenting the bit of his demonic form once again. Ooh, like to play dirty. I like it. Angel cooed in a seductive tone, disgusting the radio demon even more. Do not talk to me ever again, Al demanded, then went back on continuing his argument with the girlfriend of the Princess of Hell. I'll get that sweet overlord cock one way or another, the spider demon stated, making Izuku and Shadow absolutely confused, with the former not knowing what to think of him, when suddenly, an oinking sound was released from below, causing all three of them to look down on the thing which let this noise out. And when they did, Izuku's and Shadow's eyes widened in surprise, while Angel Dust acquired an actual cheerful smile by seeing the creature next to him. The thing that let out that oink was a cute, small pink pig demon, observing our protagonist with its curious eyes. The pig had various darker pink spots along the body, large black eyes, a pair of tiny black horns, and pink and black spikes along the body. It obtained a curly tail with a quadrilateral barb at the end of it, and although they were not visible, the pig also boasted a mouthful of pointy sharp teeth. The pig also acquired little dark hooves and a collar around its neck with a red bow. Hey, cutie pie, how did you get down here? Angel wondered innocently as the pig looked at him, and he leaned down to the pig, grabbing it with all of his 4 arms and raising it to his face with glee. Did you miss me? He chuckled as his pig touched his nose with its own and oinked happily in response. Is he your pet? Our young Cambion queried with confusion. You betcha, Angel replied with happiness while setting his eyes on our dear heroine, then focusing his full attention back on his pet. He's my little fat nuggets. The gay Pawn Star responded, enjoying the company of his pet even more and unintentionally making Izuku raise his ears and a little bit and form a small smile on his face. However, this sweet moment was cut short when the cobra-like sinner began his own speech out of nowhere. What a delightful news! With the child of my greatest rival being real, I shall defeat his father in his presence and show him who's a true overlord, Serpentius announced dramatically, getting the attention of our protagonist, his shadowy friend, the spider-based demon, and his pig pet. Who are you exactly? Izuku questioned as he tilted his head to the left in order to observe the demon who made this statement. Do not put up SSSS silly questions like, child. I'm sure that your superior told a lot about the acts we had together, Pentius noted proudly. No, he never did, Izuku answered more confusedly. Suddenly, upon hearing this, Serpentius let out a loud gasp in pure shock and disbelief. This is unacceptable. I could barely tolerate the arrogance of your father, but I cannot bear this. For I, the great Serpentius, I shall present you with some education about myself, he declared, then began to introduce himself to our heroine in his own way. I'm the great Serpentius, the future great overlord, the most genius inventor of hell, and future ruler of this realm, whose foes kneel down to in fear and the sinner tremble by saying his name, he announced proudly and dramatically in an over-the-top performance style, confusing Izuku and Shadow even more. He's just a fucking lunatic who only deserves to get a bunch o' kick in the ass from time to time by me and my girl. Angel added, getting a frustrated look from the snake sinner. You wanna go, like you're Missy? Serpentius questioned in an enraged tone while looking at Angel in the eyes, ready to fight. Bring it on, Daddy, Angel answered with a smug on his face as placed and held fat nuggets with lower arms, accepting the serpent's offer, whose eyes widened in realization and shifted his tone in an instant. How stupid of me, what kind of father I would be if I harmed my precious little son, the snake-like sinner said in an almost sad manner, making Angel dust facepalm with his upper right hand due to the stupidity of the notable kingpin. I'm not your kid, ya effin' idiot, Angel snapped back in tiredness thanks to the nonsense of Serpentius, while our protagonist and his shadowy friend witnessed all of this with utter confusion. As they observed the conversation between the two, the argument between Alastor and Vaggie finally came to an end, with the radio demon smiling smugly as always and the moth demon storming off in anger while Charlie went after, obtaining a worried face in the process. Once they left the area, Alastor decided to turn around and approach his son with delight in the purpose of sharing his wonderful news with him. I'm back, my boy, Alastor declared, getting next to his son and making him and his shadow observe him. I apologize for keeping you up with my little conversation with Miss Vagatha, but I have delightful news, my boy, he announced. You may stay here for the weekend. Are you ready for some quality father and son time, my boy? Yes, Dad. Our young overlord answered with a smile on his face. Excellent. Now, follow me and after the presentation of your room, let us begin our great bonding experience, the radio demon declared as cheerfully as always, then proceeded to head off towards a hallway while Izuku and Shadow were about to begin to follow him just as he constructed. But as our dear heroine decided to move, he remembered back what the symbol of peace said to him. All the encouraging words he said to him that made him cry from happiness due to the number one hero believing in his dream. He couldn't let All Might's, his idol's, encouragement go away for nothing. So, after a quick gulp of saliva, he prepared himself mentally to ask a single, yet really serious question. Dad? Izuku queried, gaining his father's attention. Yes, my boy, Alastor inquired, turning his head in the direction of his son. Can I ask you something? Izuku asked anxiously. Of course, my boy. Whatever you desire, the radio demon replied gleefully. Well, you see, our dear hero started, pushing his index fingers to each other. In 10 months, I have to do an E-exam to the H-Hero school called UA. You know that school, right? He wondered worriedly. Of course I do, Alastor responded. You have told me about it countless times, my boy, he pointed out. Right, Izuku remarked while smiling awkwardly, being reminded that he indeed told about the top hero school to his father a lot of times, then continued, Anyway, in order to get in, I must do a writing and a practice exam. Our young overlord explained, scratching the back of his head with his right hand while Shadow witnessed all of this. And I was thinking that if it isn't a problem, would you help me train my quirk and my voodoo magic to get prepared to the entrance exam? He finished anxiously while looking at the ground in nervousness, worried for the answer of his father. Oh, my boy, nothing would make me happier, Alastor announced, surprising Izuku and causing him to look at his father with wide eyes. From this day on, you will visit me every day and I'll help you prepare for your exams. The radio demon declared gleefully, then continued. Now, follow me, my boy, and let us begin training right away. I'm coming too, Nifty exclaimed with happiness, getting the attention of our protagonist and his father. I want to help Izuku too. As you wish, my dear Nifty. Alastor responded, then focused his attention on his cat sinner friend-servant behind the bar counter. Care to join, my dear Husker? He wondered. I don't fucking care about this shit, but I've got no choice. I have to help the kid one way or another. Husk replied grumpily with a bored tone as he reached the location of the trio. "Tea, thank you," Izuku said, finally straightening his ears and tail, feeling truly grateful for the words of his demonic family members. "Don't mention it, my boy. It is a duty of a family to help out each other," Alastor pointed out, getting an agreeing nod from the tiny female cockroach demon. "Now, let's cut this conversation short and truly begin your training, my boy," he declared. Then, with his father, aunt, and uncle, Izuku and Shadow entered the hallway Alastor came out of and proceeded to follow the trio to his new room. Then to the backyard of the hotel, where they settled down, and after Alastor told Izuku everything about the hotel and why he came here, which made Izuku look at his father a little bit angrily for doing this with the princess of hell of all demons, they started the training of our young Cambion. And thus, the long, tiring but exciting 10 months training of Izuku had finally. But unbeknownst to him, during these 10 months, he'll know the rest of the residents of the hotel more closely and vice versa. The main question is, how will they react? Hell, the place of suffering and the home of countless amounts of sinners and demons, both royal and lesser. Every one of them had their normal lives, if we could call it that. For most of the lesser demons and sinners, this consisted of gambling, drug dealing and trafficking, cannibalism, and sexual business, the usual stuff that on Earth would be totally illegal, while for the nobles and royals, it was mainly made out of controlling and ruling over the masses of hell. In short, everyone had their own job to do. A certain green-haired, half-demon half-human teenager was not different, although his act was more self-improving than self-destructive. On that Sunday morning, Izuku Midoriya, who was now wearing a simple shirt with a title shirt on it written with Japanese kanjis, blue shorts, and his signature red shoes, was at the beautiful, green-grassed, red apple tree decorated backyard of the Happy Hotel and was sparring with his uncle, just like he did on almost every day for nearly 3 months since his training had started. The fighting styles Husk was teaching him were not other than Krav Maga and Jiu-Jitsu, 2 types of martial arts that were most suitable for him due to how fast it was to learn them. However, if it means it's fast to learn, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's to learn, especially when you have a really strict uncle who fought in Vietnam and is an ex-military soldier. As several droplets of sweat rolled down on his forehead, Izuku stepped forward, getting nearer to his uncle and raising his right arm in the process. "Palm strike!" Izuku exclaimed as he struck with his right hand forward in an attempt to hit his uncle's head. Unfortunately for him, this attack was unsuccessful, with Husk simply tilting his head to the left, thus avoiding Izuku's strike. "Are you effing serious, kid?" Husk questioned with a frustrated and angry tone as he observed his nephew, then crouched down, raised his left leg as the turned around in his crouch, fully straightened his left leg, and swept Izuku's legs away, causing him to lose his balance and fall on the green-grassed ground, hitting his butt and back as a result. "Oh," our young overlord said in distress as he closed his eyes in agony and bore the pain in his body while Shadow, who witnessed the whole training, flew to him in worry. "Who in Gotham hell shouts his attacks?" Husk ranted in anger in his now standing posture as his nephew and Shadow observed him, with the former doing it with a worried expression. "I know Yower," the anthropomorphic cat sinner continued, but stopped midway and took a deep breath in order to calm himself down. "I know you're a fanboy, but you can't fucking shout out the name of your attacks. During a fight, you have to spare as much air as possible. If you shout out your moves like that, you will waste air and you'll get exhausted more quickly." "Pardon," our dear heroine answered in a saddened tone while he looked at the ground and Shadow observed his master with a concerned look. "Don't say sorry," Husk replied, then leaned downwards a little bit and extended his right hand in the direction of his nephew, offering him his help to stand up. "Now get up, and let's continue." Izuku stretched out his own right hand and grabbed his uncle's hand, allowing him to pull him up into a standing position while Shadow levitated away to a nearby bench. Then, after he stood up completely, Izuku lifted both of his hands and held them up in front of his freckled face, getting himself into the Krav Maga stance that his uncle taught him on their first training. In response, Husk raised his hands as well, copying the posture of his nephew. But as they were about to continue their sparring, Izuku's shadowy friend came back and stopped next to our protagonist, causing Izuku to witness him holding a small red towel in his left hand and a bottle of water in his right hand, thus offering his master a fresh up and interrupting their training. No, there's no fucking rest until I say so, Husk declared in a little bit of frustration as he observed Izuku's shadowy companion and pointed at him, making him acquire a saddened expression and look at the ground sadly while Izuku smiled a little bit at Shadow's kindness and put his right hand on Shadow's left shoulder in a supporting manner. Now, let's continue, Husk commanded, making Izuku focus his attention back to him and get back into his fighting stance once again, readying himself for the upcoming fight. Izuku, my dear boy, Alastor exclaimed from the distance, approaching the trio. Great, all I fucking missed was you, Husk remarked sarcastically with a noticeable annoyance in his voice. Good morning, Dad, Izuku greeted happily as he looked at his father reach their location. How was your morning walk? Oh, it was delightful. I even had the marvelous sight of a fellow citizen being devoured by the kind inhabitants of Cannibal Colony. Oh, his wonderful screams, the radio demon announced in joy, making his son roll his eyes at this statement, not sharing and not liking the type of entertainment his father enjoyed. Now, I must apologize for interrupting the improving of your physical strength, but may your father ask a little favor from you? Alastor wondered. Sure, our young overlord replied almost instantly, although it was slightly weird. Why would his father ask a favor from him? Would you be so kind as to find Princess Charlotte for me and tell her that I'm waiting for her in my tower? She and I must attend to discuss the promotion of this wonderful establishment of hers, Alastor explained, surprising his son with his request a little bit. During these 3 months, Izuku and Charlie didn't talk much, just occasionally saying hi to each other when they met from time to time, with, of course, Izuku doing it by performing a 90-degree bow every time he saw her for the first time on a day, which already happened this day as well. That's why it was strange for him that his father asked him to tell his message to the Princess of Hell. But he couldn't say no to his father. So, the nice young Cambion he was, he made his decision and opened his mouth in order to let his opinion known. But before he could do that, he had to ask permission from a certain cat sinner by looking at him and waiting for his opinion. Fine, do whatever you want, I don't care, Husk said with a bored tone, but come back as fucking fast as possible, he added with a serious tone while our protagonist nodded in understanding, then turned his head in the direction of his father's location. Okay? Izuku answered, accepting his father's request. I'll look for the princess. Splendid, thank you kindly, my boy, Al told as delightfully as ever. But I have to back to go my room and change my clothes, Fi, our dear heroine added, but he was suddenly stopped by his father snapping with his red-clawed fingers, causing Izuku's attire to change to the clothes that were similar to the ones his father wore, with the only difference being the colors of Izuku's clothes obtaining a green color instead of red, in an instant, and making his son's training attire appear in Shadow's hands in a well-folded-up form. After Izuku witnessed this with surprise, he looked back at his father with a grateful smile on his face. Thanks, Dad, he murmured as Shadow flew back to the bench and put down his master's clothes next to the red towel. You're very welcome, my boy. Now, have fun, the princess, the radio demon told happily while Shadow levitated back to their location. With this, Izuku and Shadow began to set off and started their search for the Princess of Hell by heading towards the door that separated the insides of the hotel and its backyard. Once they were out of hearing range, Husk turned his head towards his boss friend. You know where's the princess, don't you? He questioned with an annoyed tone. Oh, my dear Husker, you know me so well, Alastor declared joyfully, then continued. I do know the location of Princess Charlotte, but I decided it would benefit my boy if he exchanged a conversation with her. Meeting another kind fellow never hurts anyone, especially if it's a royal. The radio demon added, So, how's my sweet boy's training going? Is he practicing properly? He's doing it fine. Although he still isn't over his giant fanboyism, the kid's got a lot of potential and determination, Husk admitted, acknowledging the will and the strength of his nephew. What delightful news, just what I expected from my boy, the radio demon announced with fatherly pride. At this rate, he will turn into a true overlord in no time. I cannot wait for his first deal, Alastor declared in absolute happiness as he imagined his dear boy as a powerful and feared overlord. Hold your goddamn asses, Smiles. It's too fucking dangerous for the kid to get into shitty deals, Husk clarified with anger in his voice. I know, my dear Husker, but it is crucial for his future. After all, he's an overlord in blood. We earn and strengthen our power from the deals we establish, and I want him to be as strong as possible," Alastair explained as he watched his son get nearer and nearer to the door, then continued. "Hell is not a walk in a beautiful park for anyone, let alone young demons. For now, I believe it will do enough for him to improve his physical and demonic abilities. But when he gets older, for his own future, he must start making deals in order to be more powerful. I want my boy to be capable of protecting himself from the demons and the evils of hell. I don't desire for the event that occurred nearly 10 years ago to be repeated." Alastair confessed with actual concern in his voice, with Husk, maybe for the first time in his entire afterlife, sharing his opinion. Then, he moved his head as well and observed Izuku as he opened the door and, with Shadow by his side, entered the building, closing the door behind them and completely vanishing from sight. Meanwhile, after accessing the building, our protagonist and his shadowy friend walked through a red-walled hallway decorated with numerous, golden-lined, circus-related silhouettes, like elephants standing on large balls, lions on rings, or beautiful parade horses, while the spaces between these symbols were occupied by dark red wooden doors that separated each room in the hotel, with the doors having numbers carved into them, showing the number of the room. After a few minutes, Izuku and Shadow got out of the hallway and reached the lobby of the hotel, the room where they first met the residents of this place. As they looked around, they noticed that, although not everyone was foundable in the lobby, it was still occupied by some of the main cast. The most famous sinner pawn star of hell, Angel Dust, was sitting at the bar counter of the Caviar Bar and leaned on it with the elbow of his upper right arm, resting his head in his upper right hand and scrolling down on the social media of hell with a bored-to-death expression on his face while keeping his lower arms on his legs. At the other side of the lobby, the tiny female cockroach sinner and Izuku's aunt, Nifty, was standing on one of the 3 sofas and was cleaning it with a white feathered vintage duster, while the one-eyed demon cat, whom Izuku known as Kiki as his father told him, was laying on the table between the 3 furniture and was sleeping peacefully on its surface. The last demon who was in the area was not other than Vaggie, the moth-based demon, who was sitting on one of the 3 sofas and was watching something on the vintage television, with her holy spear being positioned next to the sofa. As his father put it, Vaggie was kind of a romantic partner for the Princess of Hell, so it would be the perfect choice to ask her where the princess went. But still, for Izuku, her appearance was still intimidating and still made Izuku to be afraid of her. Her look was too similar to those. Things haunted his dreams for a long time. But there was no way he was going to let his father down. So, after a quick gulp of saliva, he moved his legs and walked towards Vaggie, while Shadow followed him with a concerned face due to the fear he saw on his master's face. Miss Vaggie?" our young overlord stuttered nervously, proceeding to hide his afraidness, which was unsuccessful thanks to his slightly lowered ears and tail. "HM?" Vaggie started. She turned her head with her normal expression on her face, which immediately changed into a face of alarm and hatred when she saw the person who had just said her name. "Oh, it's you." "Yes, it's me, Izuku," he introduced himself anxiously. "I know." The moth-based female sinner replied coldly with her voice obtaining a hateful tone. "Right," Izuku said, correcting his mistake, then continued, "Sorry to bother you, Miss Vaggie, but may I ask where the Princess of Hell is?" he wondered in nervosity, being anxious for the reaction of Vaggie, which came shortly after. "Why the hell would I tell you where Charlie is? You have nothing to do with her," Vaggie answered harshly, getting more and more aggressive and standing up from her seat, causing Shadow to move closer to his master, ready to unleash his protective form. "You want to hurt her?" Izuku started, but was quickly stopped by Vaggie grabbing and pointing her holy spear at him, causing him to lift his arms into the air in a surrendering manner. "Because if you do..." Vaggie started bringing the sharp end of her spear a little bit closer to Izuku's face. "I won't hesitate to protect her," she warned furiously, completely frightening Izuku. This was the moment when Shadow had enough. He flew straight in the direction of Vaggie and grabbed her left arm with his right hand tightly, making Vaggie look at him and widen her right eye in surprise when she saw Izuku's shadowy friend in his red-eyed, sharp-teethed, long-taloned form. Although the aura of the holy weapon prevented him from showing this form, he did not care about it. All he wanted was only one thing, to ensure to safety of his one true master. But even this look didn't scare Vaggie, who observed Shadow with determination and bravery, not showing any kind of fear towards him. "It's all right, Shadow, you don't have to worry about me. I can handle this," Izuku assured his shadowy companion, causing both Vaggie and Shadow to set their eyes upon our protagonist while he attempted to calm Shadow down. Then, Izuku turned his head and focused his attention back on the female sinner in front of his eyes. "I need to note the princess's location B because my dad wants to speak with her about the advertisement of the hotel," Izuku explained nervously, trying to convince Vaggie that he meant no harm. Vaggie raised one of her eyebrows upon hearing this. Although she openly disliked the idea of the radio demon joining the hotel and him wanting hers and Charlie's plan to fail miserably, she couldn't deny that even with his presence, it finally became possible for the hotel to get some, although just a little bit, attention from the citizens of Hell, thus giving her and her girlfriend a chance to finally prove the existence of redemption. And if they wanted that to happen, they had to cooperate with Alastor, if they liked it or not. So, with a short sigh, she lowered her weapon, got it away from the face of our protagonist, and calmed herself down a bit. "Fine," Vaggie said, getting her arm out of Shadow's grip, placing her weapon next to her body, and putting her left hand on her hip. "She's on the 9th floor. Since she's having a call right now and wants to be alone, I assume she's on the balcony of room 85th. Just use the elevator to get up there, go inside the room and just tell her that your dad wants to speak with her," Vaggie noted, calming down Izuku a bit and making Shadow revert back to his original form. "Elevator?" Izuku questioned confusedly, not knowing what Vaggie was talking about. Fortunately for him, his confusion completely vanished when the girlfriend of the Princess of Hell raised her right pointed at something, making Izuku look in the direction she pointed at. And when he did, he widened his eyes in surprise by seeing the closed, golden-colored doors of an elevator between the caviar bar and the resting part of the lobby. "Oh, I see. Thank you, Miss Vaggie," our young Cambion remercied, focusing his attention back to the moth-based female sinner and lowering his arms and straightening his ears and tail. "But if I see any injury or scar on her," Vaggie started, raising her holy weapon to Izuku's face once again, "I won't hesitate to eliminate the one who hurt her," she warned with a serious tone. "Understood?" "Oui, madam," Izuku replied frightenedly. "Hey, Toots!" Angel Dust exclaimed, getting the attention of the trio. "Tell your good-looking uncle to bring that big sexy ass o' his here. This body needs the good stuff, you know," Angel requested, fixing his fluff with his lower set of arms and holding his phone in one of his upper hands, pissing off Vaggie with his order. "No, I won't allow you to drink any alcohol after what happened yesterday," the girlfriend of the Princess of Hell ordered frustratedly. "Oh come on, bitch, I just had a rough day and I wanted to let off some steam," Angel Dust clarified, pissing Vaggie off even more while Izuku and Shadow observed the whole thing with confusion. "You literally tried to climb on the walls and shoot web like a goddamn superhero," Vaggie declared, revealing the result of Angel's most previous drunk activity and surprising our protagonist and his shadowy friend with her remark. "And? What if I got messed up?" the famous gay porn star questioned, causing Vaggie to become infuriated even more. "It's not like it matters or something," he remarked, pulling the last straw of Vaggie's calmness and making her unleash her anger towards the spider sinner. "Now, listen here, Angel." Vaggie started really angrily, thus beginning another long argument between herself and Angel Dust, while Izuku and Shadow just watched the whole thing occur, not noticing the approach of a certain tiny female cockroach demon. "Good morning, Izuku," Nifty greeted, now empty-handed, leaving her duster on the sofa and gaining the attention of her nephew and his shadowy friend. "Good morning, Auntie," Izuku said, greeting his aunt with a smile on his face. "Did you sleep well? Did you have any nightmares?" Nifty inquired worriedly. "No, I didn't have any," Izuku replied, trying not to make his aunt worry about his well-being, but unfortunately, this attempt of his failed miserably due to his ears and tail becoming lowered, proving the cockroach demon's worried thoughts and making her look at our dear heroine with a sad and worried expression. "Izuku?" Nifty started, "I'm your aunt. I know when you're lying," Nifty pointed out worriedly, making Izuku regret his attempt. "I know," Izuku said sadly. "I just don't want to make you worry about me," he confessed. "Oh, Izuku," Nifty answered sorrowfully, then continued, You don't have to lie to me to make me happy. I'm your aunt. You know you can always tell me if you have a problem. And you know I'll always listen to your problem, and I'll always help you to solve it. Nifty reminded her nephew, knowing well that he didn't lie just to save his skin. I know, Izuku repeated regretfully, feeling that he failed his aunt. Now, come here, the cleaner of the hotel requested, spreading her arms wide and offering her nephew a hug. Seeing this, Izuku kneeled down to his aunt's level and accepted her hug without hesitation, thus embracing each other a big hug. Just don't lie to me and tell me if you have a problem, okay? Decoured, ma tante. Our young Cambion responded, making a small smile on his face and breaking from their hug not long after he said that. All the while Shadow just observed his wholesome scene. I have to go now. I don't want to make Dad wait, he remarked as he looked at his aunt and vice versa. All right, tell Miss Charlie I said hi, he asked, now forming a tiny smile on her white face. I will, Izuku replied, then stood up from his kneeling, turned around, and with Shadow by his side, he walked to the door of the elevator and pushed the down button down, causing the doors of the elevator to open with a tinkling sound. After the doors opened fully, Izuku and Shadow entered the red-colored elevator, with the former moving his head to the left and inspecting the red-colored control panel of the elevator, searching for the exact golden-colored button that could bring them to the 9th floor, and the latter changing back into his shadow form. Once our protagonist found the button he needed, he pushed it down, and with another tinkling sound, the doors of the elevator began to close. Before they closed completely, Izuku looked at his aunt and waved at her with his right hand and a small smile on his face, which she returned with her own wave and her own small smile. And thus, the doors closed fully, separating them and leaving Nifty in the lobby to continue her cleaning while she listened to Vaggy's and Angel's argument. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 4. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author MaxX69 on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.